tourist attraction. The locals here are Mayan Indians. They've been living in these parts since long before the Spaniards came. The women still wear their traditional shawls and headdresses. The people are poor, so their exotic handicrafts come cheap. You do see armed soldiers here and there, but after 36 years of guerrilla insurgency, the country is now at peace. And it's a beautiful country too. Yet back in 1982, the tourists never came to Quiché province. What came rumbling up instead from Guatemala City was death.
On behalf of the rich oligarchy and backed by the fiercest army in the region, the Indians are being massacred. They are being cut to pieces as if the army has come to see them as animals.
One of the few contemporary television accounts of the Western Hemisphere's most terrible 20th century atrocity. At the time, the Reagan administration dismissed such talk as wild exaggeration. But this American knows that genocide is just what happened. He's flown in from Oklahoma City to meet me at Dallas International Airport. This has been his jumping off point for more than 20 years, to Argentina and Chile and Bolivia, to Bosnia and Kurdistan. He's not a tourist or a businessman, or, despite appearances, an old retired spy. Dr. Clyde Snow, forensic anthropologist, is an expert on bones. And just 2.5 hours flight away, there are boneyards in plenty.
Hard to throw a rock around it out here without hitting a mass grave. There are a lot of them, unfortunately, and we've only really, in all the years of the teams that work down here, scratched the surface.
We're on our way to visit the team of young forensic anthropologists that Clyde Snow's been training since he first came to Guatemala 10 years ago. They were students then, but they've had so much practice in these hills that now they're among the world's foremost exponents of the art of exhuming a mass grave.
It was totally crazy. You know, these people, we're going to be digging up here in this little village in the middle of nowhere. We're not a threat to world peace, not especially not the children, not the women.
The army first moved into Quiché province in late 1981. It was determined to eliminate the last stronghold of a 3,000-man guerrilla force which had been challenging its rule of Guatemala ever since the early 1960s. Soon terrible rumors began to leak out from these secret hills of civilians massacred, women raped and tortured, villages burnt. A church report said the army's operations have resulted in a horrendous human tragedy. Amnesty International published verbatim accounts of widespread massacres. Yet the US government did its best to shift the blame from the army to the left-wing guerrillas.
It has been established that some of the alleged atrocities never occurred. In most cases known to have occurred, it has not been possible to determine whether the guerrillas or the army was responsible. It appears more likely that in the majority of cases, the insurgents have been guilty.
But slowly in recent years, the lush, well-watered hills of Quiché have given up their secrets. The team that Clyde Snow trained have played their part, and they're still doing it today. A half-hour's trek above the settlement of Xolque, we're told, we'll find them in a cornfield. And so indeed we do.
How you been, partner?
Pretty good, nice to have you.
Yeah, great. How many graves you got now?
We got 5 open right now.
5 open?
Yeah. Waiting.
Yesterday I thought it was 4.
Oh no, we got another one.
So far, the team has uncovered 14 skeletons, almost all of them old men, women, and young children. Somewhere in the cornfield are another 50 bodies, give or take. The team knows this for sure because some of the men who buried their families, their wives and children, parents and in-laws, are here to help dig them up again.
Para no pegarle a los huesos, o sea, no nos vamos a ir muy hasta el fondo,
Men like Balthazar, who's been digging trenches for 2 days, trying to find the grave where he buried his sister. That was on March the 2nd, 1982. Now, 17 years later, the rich volcanic soil is brushed away from shattered skulls and bones. Each body will be photographed in situ, each bone meticulously bagged and labeled, to be taken back to the laboratory in Guatemala City.
This is a big step right here.
But even before the skeletons are removed, Freddie Pecciarelli and his team from the Foundation for Forensic Anthropology can tell much of the story from the bones.
That is a male skeleton. This is a female skeleton that happens to be his wife, according to testimony. And this is her sister. And the lady sitting on the corner of the grave, which I don't want to point to over there, is the daughter.
Possibly now 3 gunshot wounds to the head.
Yeah. So it basically corresponds with the testimony that says that these victims were either shot or macheted. So we have both machete wounds, cutting wounds around the cervicals, and a gunshot wound to the head.
Well, when I say gunshot wounds to the head, we're talking about, you know, execution. It's not as random as you'd get if they just sprayed people. Somebody was in pretty close and pretty methodical.
Later, when the bones are moved, they'll find bullets from Israeli assault rifles, used exclusively by the Guatemalan army. That comes as no surprise to Andres, Miguel, and Salvador. They remember all too clearly the day the army arrived in Cholqué, Sunday the 28th of February, 1982.
Y yo le dije a mi mujer de que salimos, porque los soldados pues que ya se mire pues que ya no somos gente, se mire los soldados, ya somos animales. Cuando uno mira a una persona anda por ahí, de una vez lo van a disparar y lo matan. Pero mi mujer tiene como 15 días nada más, no quiso de salir. Entonces solo ella me dijo que salga, porque yo sé que los hombres que van a perseguir los soldados, sino que yo soy mujer, no nos hace nada, mejor salga. Pues está bueno, yo salí, por eso yo le dejé a mi mujer a mi casa, a mi familia. Entonces yo cuando yo salí, me fui en esa serra.
Today, only the ruins of the church and an abandoned schoolhouse show where the village once stood. From the hill behind the village, Andres watched the soldiers going from house to house. They rounded up everyone they could find, including his wife and children, and took them up the path towards the cornfield, out of sight. Also hiding in the hills that day was Miguel and his 3 children. His wife had gone to the nearby market town that morning. He never saw her again.
Ya cuando subí a 3 como a las 2 de la tarde o 3 de la tarde, cuando oí el gran ruido aquí, que ese es que están matando aquí ahorita, que los pobres que gritando, ¿y qué por qué será? Oír disparo y gritando, pero no, yo no lo veo porque yo estoy al otro lado, por los cerros pues no se ve, ¿va? Entonces así es que me quedé yo con 3 güiros, sin mamá, sin nada.
It was 2 days before Andres and the other survivors emerged from the hills to bury the dead. Andres covered his family with a blue plastic sheet before filling in their grave. It's preserved their shoes and clothes, as well as their bones. His wife, his 2 children, aged 4 and 5, and his father-in-law, 4 victims of one unremarkable massacre. The Guatemalan Truth Commission, which reported earlier this year, collected detailed accounts of more than 400 separate massacres in the Western Highlands in those years. There were about 100,000 individual victims. Around 95% of those deaths, the Commission said, were attributable to the Guatemalan army and the vigilante groups it armed and controlled. The Commission's chairman, a German lawyer, was unequivocal.
La Comisión concluye que, en el marco de las operaciones contra insurgentes realizadas entre 1981 y 1983 en ciertas regiones del país, agentes del Estado de Guatemala cometieron actos de genocidio en contra de grupos del pueblo del Maya.
The use of the word genocide drew wild applause from the victims' relatives. It did not amuse the generals, but they are safe enough, at least for now. The Guatemalan government agreed to the setting up of a truth commission on condition that it did not attempt to name the perpetrators of the crimes that it described.
La verdad es la palabra primera.
The Catholic Church was not so squeamish. In April last year, the former Bishop of Quiché, Juan Garadi, masterminded a detailed account of the 30 Years' War. It did name names: generals, colonels, captains.
Mientras no se sepa la verdad, las heridas del pasado seguirán abiertas y sin cicatrizar.
Three days later, the outspoken bishop was dead, bashed to death in his own garage with a concrete block. In the 15 months since, the priest who shared the bishop's house has been arrested and then released. But only now is a new prosecutor daring to focus his attention on the evidence that points to the involvement of military intelligence. If a bishop could be murdered with impunity a year ago, what chance of justice have the Mayan Indians, whose relatives are 17-year-old skeletons? Freddie, what do you think in the current climate here, the chances that the perpetrators of this particular massacre will ever be prosecuted and found guilty of their crimes?
Slim to none, I would say. And according to testimony, the people responsible belong to the Guatemalan military. It would be very difficult for the prosecutor's office that belongs to the state, and it's part of the judicial system of the state, would go after another sector of the state at this moment in time.
And yet the work, hard and hot and gruesome, and seemingly without an end in sight, goes on.
What keeps me going personally is, well, you know, the opportunity to be able to help one person at a time, to be able to identify, maybe his children, her mother. Also the fact to be able to contribute to tell the real story of Guatemala. And so people, not only in Guatemala, not only my children, but everyone would know what really happened here.
At least we're putting the evidence of these massacres on the scientific record. And it's good, hard, solid forensic evidence. And that makes it difficult for the revisionists to come in 20 or 30 years from now and say, oh, this stuff didn't happen. And so it's hard to argue against a skull with a gunshot wound in the back of the head.
It is impossible sitting in Washington to determine what is going on in the highlands of Guatemala. All you can do is rely on the professionals who do the reporting, which is precisely what we did.
As Assistant Secretary of State for Human Rights under President Reagan, Elliott Abrams was responsible for the State Department reports which consistently downplayed allegations of mass killings by the Guatemalan army.
The embassy should not be saying that the government committed these acts unless it can really prove that the government did commit them. Presumably at that moment, the embassy felt that it did not have adequate evidence to say that.
But what was the embassy in Guatemala telling Washington? Last year, on President Clinton's orders, around 1,000 classified documents were released to the Guatemalan Clarification Commission. They've been collected and analyzed by the National Security Archive, a non-profit pressure group in Washington, D.C. The documents represent no more than a tiny fraction of the full secret archive. Nevertheless, they are revealing.
There are CIA reports, there are Defense Intelligence Agency reports, there are embassy cables. We have, in fact, one CIA document from 1982 that was produced by the station in Guatemala City that specifically describes one of the massacres that were taking place in the Ixil Triangle at the time. And the reporting officer is quite clear about what's happening up there. It says the well-documented belief by the Army that the entire Ixil Indian population is pro-guerrilla has created a situation in which the Army can be expected to give no quarter to combatants and non-combatants alike. We do have material indicating that the United States was certainly aware of the kind of violence that was going on. And so my opinion of the human rights reporting that was going on at the time is that it was profoundly politically driven and that they did not want to know or report on what was happening.
Veterans of the Reagan administration make no apology for their political agenda. These were the years when America was obsessed with ousting the Sandinista government in Nicaragua. Guatemala was even closer to home.
It seemed clear to us that if you had a Nicaragua in Guatemala, what you've got is a Nicaragua, that is to say, a Soviet-style government armed by the Soviet Union, lousy with Soviet and East German and Czech and other secret police agents on the border of Mexico.
The priority was defeating communism. The Reagan administration was funding the Contras in Nicaragua and the army in El Salvador. But there was a Carter-era ban on military aid to Guatemala. The Guatemalans were supplied instead by Israel and Argentina. But only America could supply the helicopters they needed to take the war to the highlands. The Reagan administration wanted Congress to lift the arms embargo. As the Guatemalan Truth Commission pointed out, the lives and deaths of Central American peasants have never weighed much in the scales against the commercial and strategic interests of the United States.
Las investigaciones de la Comisión demuestran que hasta mediados de la década de los 80 hubo fuertes presiones del gobierno de los Estados Unidos de América y de empresas norteamericanas para mantener la arcaica e injusta estructura socioeconómica del país.
That simple truth is still denied by many North American Cold Warriors.
You can't explain away Latin history and Latin culture and say that everything that happens in Latin America is America's doing. There is such a thing as Guatemala. There is a country. There is a people. The fact that we've had a democracy since 1789 and they haven't is not because we imposed military dictatorship on them.
In fact, that's exactly what did happen when Guatemala attempted to escape its past. That past began when Spain set up its Central American capital in Guatemala in the 1540s. Ever since, the country has been ruled by a tiny land-earning elite, and the Mayan peasants have been ruthlessly exploited. Though civilian presidents have sometimes come and always gone, Guatemala was effectively ruled by the most ruthless and efficient army in Latin America.
Izquierda!
And in the 1950s and 60s, that army and its ferocious intelligence branch was created, armed and trained in counterinsurgency doctrine by the freedom-loving agents of the USA.
The United States created the killing machine that went on to murder and torture hundreds of thousands of people. And perhaps most importantly, the United States poured millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars into training. They trained the Guatemalan military how to raid houses. They trained them in surveillance. They trained them in interrogation techniques. And we have now, years later, the declassified CIA and Defense Department manuals to prove it. I have something from, for example, as early as 1954, which is called A Study of Assassination. And it describes in the most chilling and bureaucratic terms how to murder an individual or individuals. It even goes on to show in graphic terms how to enter a room with 10 people sitting around a table and murder them one by one. So these documents give us a very rare glimpse into the inner workings of a counterinsurgency strategy and tactics that we were very much on the ground helping to design.
One of those tactics was the deniable disappearance. Every 19th of June, the few remaining stalwarts of Guatemala's labor movement mark the day in 1980 when 25 trade union leaders were snatched by armed men, never to be seen again. Over the years, 45,000 Guatemalans, guerrilla leaders to be sure, but also students and professors, priests and social workers and peasant leaders, have simply disappeared. The tactic has been used from Argentina to El Salvador. But the very first mass disappearance in Latin America took place in Guatemala in 1966.
The kidnapping of some 30 communist leaders and their associates and their secret execution was the product of an operation designed by the United States, by the CIA and the Agency for International Development at the time.
Last March, President Clinton made an official visit to Guatemala. In a first for a US president, he openly acknowledged that America's support for repressive regimes here and elsewhere in Latin America had been wrong.
I will reaffirm America's commitment to shed light on the dark.
I gotta turn your audio on. There you go. Now give me.
What's up, everybody?
There you go.
How's everybody feeling today?
Hope everybody had a wonderful Easter. He is riseth.
Presented every day with the gruesome consequences of their country's past. A mere acknowledgement.
What's up, Grom? Hope you enjoyed the little mouse cursor across the screen. I know how much you guys love that. You know what, let me just change one thing. Let me just leave it on cameras for a second. But wait, your audio should be coming through for just fine. Yeah.
Everybody, is my audio coming through okay?
Or am I a liar?
Has Johnny deceived me?
As fans of the show should be well aware, one of us is always lying and the other one is always telling the truth. Play a little bit of that.
You can go to Gromsterino at twitch.tv/Gromsterino is where you can go for your circumcision reversals.
Yeah, he will set you up.
He will instruct. He will perform. He will instruct.
So yeah. I was talking about this, when we were before we were officially live, right? We like to.
Dude, I use ham.
Oh, thank you, Tay.
Hero.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
So we were talking about foreskins for some reason before we went live. I forget how.
Prevalent topic within the Subversive History chat and overall community is foreskin rights.
So, we are the official Subversive History stance is we are anti-circumcision, despite the fact that, I believe every member of it is circumcised.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, because, there's this method...
I've been victimized.
I've been victimized. Because there's this method of, regrowing it, right? And then you could just go and do it again. Is it, an infinite kind of thing? Can you just endlessly keep getting circumcised, regrowing it, and then get circumcised again, and then grow it back again?
I don't think there's any science to support why you couldn't do that.
Right. I feel like science, owes us an explanation on that one. But Pat brought up these people that are way more boots on the ground about, like, you know, this brutality that we're inflicting upon peni havers within, like, you know, at least the U.S. got an Ouroboros skin. So, Pat showed me this picture. Would you like to go further into detail about these people, Pat?
Well, I don't really have much further detail other than I knew about this picture. But just based on the community, you know, the emphatic response for our community, we've decided to abandon Killing Hope. We've decided to abandon really political streaming, socialism, Marxism, all of those topics. And this Subversive History will be exclusively circumcision-related talk show.
We're changing everything.
Yeah, pull that down. Pull that down.
It's just anti, you know, circumcision poster behind it.
It's like Clockwork Orange.
I definitely enjoy this person's vibe right here, because, you know, they at least were like kind of
the sunglasses.
They were gender neutral about it, you know, like stop cutting baby penis, right? This person, however, you know, is like a TERF. You know, they're very gendered about it. You know,
we're not endorsing her.
Yeah, no, not her. She's definitely probably like she doesn't even have it like in the right place. Like no one's penis.
I like that they waited for the walk sign. I like that they waited for the walk sign to change for the appropriate time for them to cross the street. Also,
yeah.
So that's how you know that they're not an unruly bunch.
Yeah. Well, they don't want the cops, you know, coming down on them like super hard because you make one.
They're looking for a reason.
Yeah.
They're looking for a reason.
Yeah, they're looking for a reason to just like, you know, fucking nightstick the shit out of him right in the thigh. But yeah, she clearly does not know where the Pangus originates from. It's too high up. See, perfect.
Turn it into a sandwich cake.
Perfect.
All right, I think we've done that.
All right, yeah, I think we've killed this bit.
All right, guys, we had fun there.
We like to have fun here in between all the various war crimes of the U.S.
Yeah, we discuss. Yeah, we take a reprieve from our usual war crime laden content to have a lighthearted ribbing about the circumcision protest community.
All right, so let's see if I can do this without wrecking my shit on this fucking treadmill. Subversive History is a multimedia community project seeking to bring attention to the revolutionary struggles of the world's often unsung and frequently misunderstood sectors. These are the stories of the demonized, vilified, whitewashed, or otherwise forgotten campaigns of imperialism, colonialism, capitalist exploitation, and racial apartheid. The orthodoxy of Western hegemony has often labeled these dissidents as subversive, and these are the struggles that we aim to illuminate.
Yeah, and you know, this is it. We are right on brand here talking about Guatemala. If anyone, I hope most of you were here where I did my my pre-stream here on Guatemala, where I went over some of the historical events that led up to the Guatemalan Revolution, and then ultimately the election of Jacobo Arbenz, and the details of the land reform program. If you weren't, I apologize. Definitely some of those will be touched on here to kind of, you know, remind us of those details. But today we're going to be going into specifically the events of the coup that was carried out between the United States State Department in collusion with the United Fruit Company, who was essentially the god of Guatemala at the time. If you weren't here last week, they pretty much owned every relevant road, railroad, deep water pier. Trade was, you know, the electrical grids, the telecommunication lines, bought and sold every politician. So, you know, Guatemala was essentially a private fiefdom for the United Fruit Company until the Guatemalan Revolution of 1944, in which there was a coup, a popular coup against the dictator Jorge Ubico. After he was deposed, a progressive government was headed by Juan Arevalo, who then his successor, Jacobo Arbenz, took a more radical approach, some would say, to a land reform program to redistribute land from the United Fruit Company to the landless peasants that were mostly of Maya descent. He did this. It was a resounding success. Many people were happy. Many people were helped. Crops were getting produced at a better, more efficient rate.
They actually
the economy
historically
was doing better.
Historically, this was, and I believe even since, the highest yield of production for the country of Guatemala.
It was the second.
Second? Oh, shit.
Second highest.
Second highest.
Yep. So now we are going to get into the actual details of what the United States did to extinguish this very popular revolution that happened within Guatemala.
Do you want to go or should I? Oh,
I'll go. Right. So, to whom do you turn for help when the police are assaulting you? The old question, to whom does a poor banana republic turn when a CIA army is advancing upon its territory and CIA planes are overhead bombing the country? The leaders of Guatemala tried everyone, the United Nations, the Organization of American States, other countries individually, the world press, even the United States itself, in a desperate hope that it was all just a big misunderstanding, that in the end, reason would prevail. Nothing helped. Dwight Eisenhower, John Foster Dulles, and Allen Dulles had decided that the legally elected government of Jacobo Arbenz was communist, therefore must go, and go it did in June 1954.
Yeah, we really need that soundboard for like the Dulles brothers lightning effect.
Yeah, one day we'll do that. Yeah. So this kind of speaks to the innocence and almost the naive innocence of the Guatemalan Revolution, because this was very early on in the endeavors of the CIA. Iran had already happened. There was already some things in Greece and Italy and things like that were kind of like motivations for this. But this is one of the real like flagship endeavors of the CIA. This is essentially the campaign that really made them think that they could do what they tried to do during the Bay and Pigs invasion of Cuba. So it's interesting to see the response of the government, where they're kind of trying to plead to everyone, like, no, this has to be a big misunderstanding. Like they must not understand. Like we just have to tell them. We just have to try to do this right. Okay, we just need to cede this point to them. We just need to acquiesce this. Right. And like, in reality, that was never going to change anything. And like now we know that after the more publicized history of the CIA and these coups in the Cold War. But at the time, like you can look at it with this kind of like naive innocence of them, like, oh, they thought they could get out in front of it. Right. They thought they could be like, hey guys, we're not that bad. We're just trying to redistribute a little land. You have to see our people here are very poor, and we could really use this land to diversify our crops. And like they're just like, they have to understand. You just have to tell them. You just have to explain.
They're reasonable people, you know. Exactly. They gotta be, you know. And it's like it makes it all that much more like infuriating when we eventually will get to Chile with Allende, and it's just like, dog, come on, man. Like, you know, Fidel's trying to set you right. You know, he's bringing up like Guatemala to you. He's bringing up Indonesia. He's bringing up Brazil. Like you should know this, man. Like,
yeah. Right, exactly. So we progress into our tragedy here. So listen, man. I these subjects that I love to learn about, these Cold War campaigns that happen in every little isolated corner of the global South, and you know, sometimes they don't have a ton of English footage at all. And I wish I would have found this earlier, but I just wanted to show this video, and it's a little bit long. It's only 12 minutes. It's not that long. It's a little long, but we don't have a ton of video in here. I just felt like this video, just to show you what Jacobo Arbenz was. And it's in Spanish. We'll put the subtitles on it, so hopefully you're not just listening. But watch this video, and I want you to see what was actually happening in Guatemala. This is what the United States were like, this needs to stop. This is too much. Make sure you have to change it to English.
Oh, right. I always forget to do that. Spanish auto-generated, auto-translate. What are we? Oh, English. All right.
How come YouTube doesn't understand American exceptionalism? Put English at the top of the list. Like, it's so infuriating from my privileged position in the world.
I don't know. All the Nordics speak English, and you figured like everybody else got the picture.
Exactly. This footage is great. I wish I could have found this before, but like I said, no English source has
candidato de las fuerzas revolucionarias y progresistas de Guatemala, coronel Arbenz, prosigue con todo éxito. Estamos en la segunda ciudad del país en que el Saltenango, que lo recibe jubiloso. Más de 20.000 partidarios del coronel Arbenz se congregan a escuchar la palabra de su candidato, al que esperan llevar con la fuerza del voto del pueblo a regir los más altos destinos de la nación. Todo un programa de administración nacional fluye de los labios del candidato del pueblo cuando glosa su propósito al ser ungido como presidente de la República. El pueblo cree en Arbenz porque Arbenz garantiza un gobierno para el pueblo y con el pueblo. Gran concentración popular se reúne en la ciudad de Mazatenango para recibir al candidato del pueblo al gobierno de Guatemala, coronel Jacobo Arbenz. Más de 15.000 almas se establecen formando enorme valla en el camino del aeropuerto a la ciudad. Al paso de la comitiva, el coronel Arbenz recibe el efusivo saludo del pueblo. Con júbilo que raya en la locura, miles de hombres y mujeres se interponen al paso de la comitiva, vitoreando al candidato popular, al soldado de la revolución, al hombre en el cual confía Guatemala sus destinos de pueblo libre y soberano, de país progresista y generoso. Arbenz ha ofrecido que gobernará para todos y el pueblo guatemalteco cree en la palabra empeñada por su candidato, un hombre que jamás ha faltado a un compromiso, ya sea un compromiso con su pueblo o con la historia. El candidato de Unidad Nacional, al cual solo se oponen los intrascendentes grupos de la reacción, se da cuenta perfectas alemanas y hace un llamado para robustecer las filas de la revolución en su lucha contra las fuerzas reaccionarias del país. De que Guatemala está con él. Con ese tacto político que jamás falla a los pueblos, los guatemaltecos han elegido desde hoy al hombre que mejor representa los ideales revolucionarios y al mejor impulsor de los anhelos nacionales. Y ahora dejemos que hablen los hechos y las imágenes, mucho más elocuentes que todas las palabras. El edificio de la sucursal del Banco del Crédito Hipotecario Nacional es elegido por el coronel.
They're doing this in many cities, and that's what's so impressive about this. Like, you can find any video of any politician that assumes power or is elected to power with a throng of supporters. Like, you could even go to Yeltsin in the middle of Moscow, and he has thousands of people that are supporting him. So you can never just look at a political leader that has a bunch of people in the street and just automatically assume popular support, because there's a lot of times that they might just be like in the city center where there's a bunch of urban people that very much support them, but like that doesn't necessarily track with the polling of the entire country. But what is really interesting about what is really interesting about this situation in Guatemala is that in Guatemala, the largest city is Guatemala City. The second largest city is Xela, which is Quetzaltenango, which is like so much smaller than Guatemala City. It's like not even close. Like, to compare the two is like ridiculous. So like, for that being the second largest city, for him to go around in like even more smaller cities than Quetzaltenango and having this many supporters, I think really does speak to his actual popularity across the country.
Right. Oh, I mean, like,
notice that they keep saying different cities that he's in, and trust me, if it's not Guatemala City, these are relatively small places that are really having a large outpouring for it.
I mean, like you brought up last time, right? This is, or the last time we covered Guatemala, kind of like the intro episode for this episode, is that like this is the second elected leader in Guatemalan like history, like the 150 something years of its history as a country. Like,
according to academics that were there watching the election, Arevalo and Arbenz are the only two fair elections that have ever happened in the country, at least up until that point. I don't know every single election, but definitely up until that point, probably for most of the country's history. And it was the only time, it was the first time in Guatemalan history that political power changed hands in a peaceful and on schedule way, like not in a coup.
Right. And not like as an autocrat, like passing along leadership to like, you know, their chosen person. It's like the people actually elected the person prior to Arbenz and then also elected Arbenz. And
it was
like
at the term limit that they switched. It was the first time
like a term limit was actually like followed through on.
Yeah,
and it wasn't
the first
like
time that this ever happened.
Yeah, and it wasn't like some kind of rich oligarch, and it wasn't, you know, a military guy just kind of taking over the government via like a junta.
Mm-hmm. Well, and another thing that kind of speaks to the benevolence of Arbenz, in my opinion, is that he was part of the military junta that overthrew Ubico, but all three of the people that were elected to that temporary junta refused to run for presidency because they knew that that would kind of taint the democracy that they were trying to instill on Guatemala. So Arbenz was part of that, but he waited 6 years before, or I think maybe even longer, before he was actually elected president.
Yeah, because I think Ubico was overthrown in what, like the 44, yeah.
1944, yeah.
I was going to say the 40s, but yeah.
Yeah, 1944. Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
Arbenz para dirigir la palabra a su pueblo. Arbenz llama a la unidad revolucionaria para que siga firme la democracia. Martí es recordado en exaltación simbólica a través de la lucha que encara la clase trabajadora. Ofrece a su auditorio un mensaje de...
So they made Martí as in like Jose Martí? Oh, wow. That's so
fucking...
de todos los... by, you know, Castro in Cuba. Martí is a very significant figure.
Did you know
when I was in Guatemala, I visited a Martí statue that was in Guatemala City.
Did you know there's a Jose Martí statue right in Newark?
No, I had no...
Yeah.
Departamentos guatemaltecos. Se refiere al fenómeno de la baja de salarios como resultado de la satisfacción de intereses personales de la clase patronal y se pronuncia por una política en que ambas clases tengan una actuación de sincera y leal cooperación. Termina refiriéndose al problema de las... En Puerto Barrios, Guatemala, 15,000 personas aclaman en emocionado recibimiento al candidato nacional.
If you recall, Puerto Barrios was the only deep water port in Guatemala, or at least on the Caribbean side of Guatemala, which makes it absolutely essential for trade between Europe and the United States and just that whole Atlantic region, which is so vital to trade. Puerto Barrios, the only pier that Puerto Barrios had, was owned exclusively by the United Fruit Company, and the United Fruit Company owned the only railroad that would get you to Puerto Barrios, which effectively gave them a monopoly on the trade. They also commanded this thing called the Great White Fleet, which was all of these banana shipping vessels that they used all over the area to transport bananas, but they would also use these for international trade. So yes, this boat is going out for bananas, but also you can essentially like pay a fee or utilize the Great White Fleet for your trading concerns too. So the United States, the United Fruit Company absolutely dominated this area and international trade of Guatemala. So when you see him here, he's at Puerto Barrios. He's in this area right now.
Also, aren't like most of the main roads at that time, like the paved roads, specifically going to and from like the port? Like everything about their infrastructure is just designed for like, you know,
but also the roads are largely inadequate.
Right.
The railroads, the reason that the railroads were so oppressively monopolistic was because many of the roads themselves were very inadequate.
Right.
Especially for any meaningful shipping. If you go to Guatemala today, a highway is almost unheard of. Like if you actually drive, like when I traveled in Guatemala, I traveled from Guatemala City to Lake Atitlan, from Lake Atitlan to Shela, and it's a whole different world in terms of driving. Like even different from very much different than Mexico in terms of having like large roads like highways.
Do you hear that, class? Are you paying attention?
I love you guys. I love everybody.
I love this chat so much.
Yeah, I love it so much.
Coronel Jacobo Arbenz Guzmán. El soldado del pueblo se dirige a la ciudad, en tanto que las sirenas de los talleres anuncian la llegada del candidato a esta cálida región porteña. La llegada del candidato es un acontecimiento para Puerto Barrios, cuya población se congrega a su paso para aclamar al hombre que mejor sintetiza los anhelos del pueblo y los ideales de la Revolución de Octubre. Es conmovedor observar el entusiasmo de todos sus partidarios que confían en el coronel Arbenz para que resuelva los problemas que confronta Guatemala y especialmente esta región porteña. En la plaza mayor de la ciudad se lleva a cabo un mitin de masas. La población se congrega ante la plataforma, dispuesta a escuchar uno de los sinceros y conceptuosos discursos de su candidato. El coronel Arbenz puntualiza en su discurso los aspectos más trascendentales de la vida nacional. Ofrece resolver el problema de la vivienda de los trabajadores, se refiere a la reforma agraria y a la justa retribución del trabajo. Con relación al capital extranjero, manifiesta que no se opondrá a él, en tanto que signifique progreso para el país y que no atente contra la soberanía nacional ni afecte derechos inalienables de Guatemala.
Right. So, like Pat brought up the other day when we were talking about like the intro to the Guatemala episode, right? Arbenz was not opposed to like, you know, United Fruit Company or any other outside.
Nationalized the United Fruit Company.
Right, right. This is not Mossadegh in Iran. This is literally just like him saying that, like, you know, this is unused land, right? Mm-hmm. And we will pay you for it based off of what you have been telling us on your taxes, what the land is worth.
Yeah, exactly. And the United Fruit Company had a huge problem with that. they were very,
they took that personally.
Yeah. I took that personally.
En Cobán, en el estadio de la Ciudad Imperial y ante los delegados municipales del departamento, tiene lugar un mitin de apoyo al coronel Jacobo Arbenz, el cual llega por la vía aérea. La recepción que se tributa al candidato es extraordinariamente entusiasta. Carteles variados expresan la solidaridad del pueblo.
Of the complexions of the people that are there supporting Arbenz. Right. Certainly, you're going to see a lot of white Guatemalans, but also I want everyone to notice the significant amount of indigenous that are there supporting also.
Basically, the not white people.
Yeah, all the non-whites. Yes. Go ahead.
Hacia el coronel y su repudio a las fuerzas reaccionarias del país. Algunos de estos carteles están redactados en el dialecto nativo. Estos carteles expresan la seguridad de que el candidato...
Can you go back, just bring it back 5 seconds? They're translating everything into native dialect, and that's important to know also, is that many communities, especially back then, outside of the urban centers of Guatemala, didn't even speak Spanish.
Right.
Spanish was not, you know, some of the maybe the more educated did speak Spanish, but there was Maya languages that were being spoken in a lot of these more rural communities where a lot of the farming was happening. So if you look at this, it's saying that during these like campaigns, they're actually translating everything into native dialect also.
Not even that. He was giving political speeches earlier in the video in fluent German, right?
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Well, because like I think we kind of skipped over that aspect, but during World War One, I want to say, World War One, the government prior to this more democratic elected government literally just removed all German, ownership over a lot of like the farmland that was present.
They allied with the United States in World War One.
Yes.
And so they were like, "What's up, United States? We're really down for the cause. Germans, fuck you. We're taking the coffee plantations." Even Empresa Electrica, which is one of the largest companies in Guatemala and still one of the main electric providers in Guatemala to this day, was a German-owned company that they just took from the Germans during World War One.
Expresan la seguridad de que el candidato nacional realizará el programa de gobierno en beneficio del pueblo. En la plataforma del estadio de la Ciudad Imperial, el coronel saluda a los representantes de los grupos que le apoyan, en tanto que los contingentes empiezan a llegar por todas partes hasta formar un marco imponente en torno a su candidato. Están representados en el mitin los partidos de Acción Revolucionaria, Revolución Nacional e Integridad Nacional. núcleos de sus partidarios caídos en defensa del ideal común. Ofrece seguir tratando democráticamente aún a los enemigos que atacan por medios reprobables. Ofrece resolver el problema de las verapaces y manifiesta que cuidará de que el campesino indígena sea tratado con la justicia que hasta ahora se le ha negado. Su discurso es traducido al dialecto nativo para mejor comprensión de sus conceptos.
And in case anyone doesn't remember this, or you weren't here for the last stream we did on Guatemala, Arbenz, being part of the military, was actually oversaw the forced labor protocols that was inflicted against the indigenous people. So if you don't remember, there was these things called vagrancy laws. I think there was actually similar ones in the United States also. With this, Guatemala kind of followed suit of some of the things that you might, like if you ever watched The 13th, that documentary, where they talk about all the things that happened after slavery was and how you could effectively use like criminalization as like a loophole to like coerce people into forced labor, or legalize forced labor, should I say. It's worse than coercion. It's like outright
slavery,
mandating labor. Exactly. So what they did was these things called vagrancy laws, where if you were caught for very like minor things that generally an impoverished person may be caught doing, like urinating outside or something like that, boom, you could be put into forced labor. Also, a portion of that was that if you owned less than 100 acres of land, which is like, who owns over 100 acres of land if you're not like absurdly rich?
Right.
Especially in terms of Guatemala, if you don't have 100 acres of land, that means that you are required to do a certain number of hours on a plantation.
I believe it was 100.
Like 100 hours a year or something like that. And they would have log books where maybe it was 5 acres. I could be wrong. Matrons will on that. It could be 5 acres. I apologize. And maybe it was 100 hours that you had to do because of 5 acres. I might have mixed up those numbers. Thank you for that correction. So you would have to have a logbook on you, which, think about a logbook. You lose it, anything like that.
It's written in pencil. It's written.
Exactly. And also, you might not be able to read. 70% of Guatemala is illiterate at this point, and it soared up to 90% in the more remote areas, like where the farming was being conducted.
So I feel like even more so than like being able to read, writing isn't exactly your forte either.
So, and not only that, when you would work, you would have to. There's pictures of this where there's like one like white guy sitting at a desk and just a line of indigenous farmers that are sitting there waiting for him to fill out their hours. And I don't know if you ever did community service or something like that, but it's a similar thing where you got to like go and be like, hey, I did this many hours, and they sign off on it. So pretty much there were so many different ways that this could be manipulated. You could get fucked over. You could lose it. It could be done wrong. People would say, oh, you've been here for 10 hours here. You got 6. Like, you get fucked over in so many ways. You were just absolutely
that dude sitting at the desk is just like, I am sick and tired of sitting in the hot fucking sun all fucking day. Fuck all of these people.
You were just absolutely at the mercy of a plantation owner.
Right.
So if you failed to have this number of hours, you would be immediately arrested, put in a chain gang that went on rock breaking excursions for the building of roads. So
roads.
The person that we're talking about now actually oversaw these chain gangs during this period while he was in the military. That time radicalized him while he was overseeing like the desperate plight of the indigenous
and
those
Lennon.
That were conscripted into forced labor. Made him think that like something needs to change about this. So when you actually see him up here screaming about the plight of the indigenous peasant, he has firsthand knowledge of what they go through, and he made a pledge to change it, and he tried his best to do so. And Lennon Smash, thank you so much for donating $5 to the Book Through Bars charity. I forgot to mention this when we started, but if everybody sees down there in the bottom right corner, it says donate to charity. We are running a donation for Books Through Bars, which is a nonprofit volunteer organization that essentially gets books and gets them into prisons. Incarcerated individuals are some of the most marginalized people in this country. There is many things, obstacles in the way of them getting literature. And this is one way that you can really make someone's time easier. Not only make their time easier, but there's also associated rates of lowered recidivism, better mental health if you're able to read and engage in recreational education activities. So if you are interested in supporting helping books get into those people's hands, please drop $1 or something into that. We would greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Lennon Smash. Also, I'm a felon, so thank you so much from the felon community. Felons helping felons. That'd be a cool name for a charity, right?
That would be.
Felons helping felons. Lennon Smash. Maybe we'll get something together. Something called Felons Helping Felons.
And not I know that like Pat is very modest, but he is also like working with them in person. The donations that you give,
I'm volunteering with them also.
Yes.
Tot King, thank you so much.
Thank you very kindly. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that he's working with them in person. But the donations that you give, right? We don't handle any of the money. It goes straight to them through whatever the hell way Twitch have it set up. All right.
And Lennon Smash, just so you know, I'll just say we can have a more in-depth conversation about this if you're still at the end of the stream. But I've had no problems traveling in almost any. I don't know if maybe going to first world countries is much more difficult, but in traveling to Latin America and India, I've had no issues. So.
Also, is that a Gravedigger shirt?
Yeah.
Sick. Did you get that from what is it, Holy Mountain or whatever?
I don't know. I just got like a Facebook recommended ad. And I was like,
it's definitely Holy Mountain. All right.
I'm buying that. All right, let's go.
El coronel Arbenz, candidato del pueblo, enciende la esperanza en una vida más justa, más llevadera y más humana hasta el último rincón de Guatemala. Procedente de Guatemala y acompañado de los dirigentes políticos de su campaña, el ciudadano Jacobo Arbenz, candidato a la presidencia de la República, arriba al pueblo de Zacapa, uno de los cuarteles generales de las huestes revolucionarias, estremeciéndose con los aplausos y los vivas que la octava concentración arbencista tributa al candidato de Unidad Nacional. Todas las clases sociales y campesinos de los municipios cercanos esperaron la llegada del soldado de la revolución, formando una enorme valla que después se resuelve en estruendosa manifestación popular. En su programa de gobierno, Arbenz insiste en la urgencia que tiene Guatemala de bastarse a sí misma mediante la diversificación de cultivos y la industrialización y aprovechamiento de sus recursos naturales. Arbenz es vitoreado constantemente por la multitud, que reafirma así su decisión de llevar a la presidencia de Guatemala al candidato de Unidad Nacional. El ciudadano Jacobo Arbenz Guzmán, candidato de Unidad Nacional para la presidencia de la República, llega a la cabecera del departamento de Jalapa, siendo recibido por miles de simpatizadores que llegaron al lugar de diferentes puntos del departamento. El candidato de Unidad Nacional es aclamado entusiastamente y después hace uso de la palabra para referirse a lo más importante de su programa, por lo que concierne a los problemas básicos de Guatemala y en particular al departamento de Jalapa, haciendo hincapié en la falta de vías de comunicación y métodos anticuados con que se cultiva la tierra, mencionando también el cooperativismo como muy importante de ser adoptado por las gentes del campo en beneficio de su economía.
So through his land reform program, Decree 900, Jacobo Arbenz assisted, I think, over 100,000 individuals and I forget how many thousand families assisted with the redistribution of lands. And it was always recommended to form farming cooperatives. It was not necessarily made to just for individual ownership. There was plenty of individual ownership so that families and communities could use it for subsistence farming. So there was less malnutrition, which essentially turns into less diseases that are very curable that a lot of people were dying from at that time. But there was many cooperatives, labor unions and cooperatives that were birthed from this land reform program.
Right.
Economía. Este meeting es uno de los mejor organizados hasta la fecha en la presente campaña electoral, poniéndose de manifiesto la simpatía y el respaldo del pueblo para el candidato de Unidad Nacional, ciudadano Jacobo Arbenz Guzmán. Ciudadanos de todos los rumbos del departamento del Quiché se congregan para recibir con gran entusiasmo.
So the Department of Quiché is a specific indigenous area, not only just a department, but I believe a sect of Mayans, because not all Mayans are the same. There's different Quiché, there's Mam, there's different groups of Mayans. Quiché is a very large contingent of Mayan people that are in Guatemala. So when he's saying here, he's being received with great enthusiasm by the Quiché people.
al candidato de Unidad Nacional, ciudadano Jacobo Arbenz, quien visita la cabecera departamental para realizar la 11ª concentración de la Alianza Popular Arbencista. El coronel Arbenz arriba a Santa Cruz del Quiché, siendo recibido por los representantes de todas las fuerzas progresistas y democráticas de la zona, quienes presidiendo una compacta manifestación siguen al candidato aclamándolo constantemente.
Damn, it's a lot of people.
Especially in these areas too. Like I said, anything that's not Guatemala City, put up numbers like this is very
Como corolario de este acto cívico de trascendental importancia para la vida política de Guatemala, el candidato de Unidad Nacional, coronel Arbenz, pronuncia conceptuoso discurso en el que enfoca realísticamente los múltiples problemas de las comunidades indígenas, de las unidades de producción y de la ciudadanía.
What's that?
Addressing the problems of the indigenous communities.
Right.
Is what he's doing.
En general, proponiendo soluciones que tienen por base la reforma agraria democrática como fuente de prosperidad y bienestar para todos los guatemaltecos. Un campesino del departamento del Quiché traduce el discurso del candidato a la lengua quiché a los campesinos que desde lejanos rincones llegaron para tomar parte entusiasta en la 11ª concentración de la Alianza Popular Arbencista. Entre las aclamaciones entusiastas de millares de ciudadanos de Cuilapa, que desde varias horas antes esperaban su llegada, arriba el ciudadano Jacobo Arbenz, candidato de Unidad Nacional. Desde mucho antes de llegar a Cuilapa y a su paso por los diferentes pueblos, el candidato de Unidad Nacional fue aclamado entusiasta y constantemente por sus numerosos partidarios. En su discurso, el ciudadano Arbenz hace un análisis de la contienda electoral, demostrando cómo la reacción a falta de argumentos de solidez está empleando como elemento de propaganda la injuria y la calumnia, no solo contra el arbencismo y las fuerzas democráticas que le acompañan y sostienen, sino contra el mismo gobierno constituido y la revolución, refiriéndose además a los problemas locales más importantes, como son aquellos de la tierra y el campesinado, insistiendo en que debe implantarse la reforma agraria como la mejor solución a esos problemas. Sus palabras son siempre rubricadas con vivas y calurosos aplausos.
Oh,
just a hard cut.
Hard cut there, but yeah. So that was just a little bit. We really didn't get enough footage of actually Arbenz, and like I tried finding English speeches, like translated speeches of his. Right. It was so hard to find all that, but
I mean,
just looking at that, you can really see, and that gave us a lot of opportunity to talk about some of the past stuff, like what he was doing, what Decree 900 was, what the role of the United Fruit was. So this is where we're beginning our discussion from Killing Hope. This like exuberant, popular political force that was changing the social order of Guatemala to something that had been from something that had been oppressed for centuries into something that like finally seemed like the spring after the long Guatemalan winter of like dictators and United Fruit Company. Like this was to change, and the racism against the indigenous. There was a candidate that seemingly was for the people and was going to enact change for the people and not just the white people, for the indigenous people also.
Right. Well, I mean, like there was a lot of reiterating of, you know, posters being translated into indigenous dialects, a lot of, you know, him having translators with him and going out to these remote regions where the indigenous predominantly are, you know, that was, I think, hammered home a lot. And I think that
also, I just want to interject on that. If you remember, Aravala was the first one to set up like a national institute for like Indian studies, who was sending parties out into the most rural areas and doing their best not to infringe on them so chauvinistically, but also to like help them with like certain agricultural things and things like that. And there was polling that was very, very positive from those communities saying that we are no longer forced to work on these plantations. There was a lot of very, very positive feedback from that.
Right. I think that, like, you know, the other big thing is you're probably not going to find too many, not contemporary translations, but translations of that time because of the speculations swirling around Arbenz's politics in the West. And I don't even think, like, you know, at this point the CIA would care to even have something like this floating around in the U.S. with like an English translated version talking about all of these good things he's doing for the people of Guatemala, because then the average American reading the newspaper is going to have two conflicting narratives going on, with the newspaper talking about how, like, you know, he's this Soviet controlled puppet, and then you've got, like, you know, what you're seeing at the fucking Nickelodeon or whatever the fuck it's called, you know, the old-timey fucking theater bullshit before you watch Looney Tunes or something. I don't know, whatever the fuck old people watched back then, you know, talking about how, oh, that Guatemalan guy I was reading about in the paper, oh, he's doing all these nice, wonderful things for his people. Oh, that's not what I read in the newspaper. So this is probably why you're not going to find too many videos about Arbenz or Arbenz speaking, because I don't think a guy gets to his position without being at least a little bit charismatic or at least a little bit impassioned and being able to carry a message that, you know, can transcend national borders.
Correct. And Takiro, thank you. I'll keep you in mind for that, because I actually have quite a bit of footage from my stay in Guatemala where I interviewed people and I had to interview them in Spanish, meaning I had someone translate my questions and the responses are in Spanish. So there's so much that I would need to like subtitle on it to use it in like an American audience. So or an English-speaking audience, should I say. So I will keep you in mind. Thank you.
All right, and I don't want to ignore Matron Militia's, comment about, like, I like the idea of using international cooperatives to subvert the system of unequal exchange, cut out the imperialist super profits, reduce the cost of living of the first world workers, and increase the incomes of third world workers. Look, I love the idea just as much. The only issue is that, like, normal businesses that are all about squeezing every last drop of, surplus value out of workers already, like, 70% of the time fail, So trying to start up, like, something like an international cooperative, you're going to be, like, getting rat fucked from every corner.
Right. If such a light-handed approach to that would work, I'm absolutely in.
I think we'd see a lot more of them, too.
All right, so this one's you, right? Yeah.
All right. President Eisenhower warned about the communist dictatorship establishing.
I want everyone to remember the images that we just saw, and just keep in mind communist dictatorship. Like every time that they make these claims, I want everybody to think back to that 12-minute video that we just watched, and just remember this is who we're talking about.
Right. Just out of frame where all the white, fucking dudes with the guns, like, trained on the indigenous crowds. Yeah. Establishing an outpost on this continent to the detriment of all American nations. The U.S. ambassador to Guatemala, John Purifoy, declared that, quote, "We cannot permit a Soviet republic to be established between Texas and the Panama Canal."
Can I say something real quick? Like,
yeah.
I just love, like, the American, like, chauvinism of being like, there's just like this entire Hashkosh, what's up? There's just this entire hemisphere, and they're like, well, what do you mean? Somewhere between Texas and the Panama Canal. Like, how could it be? Like, dude, that's like a quarter of the planet. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we can't sit here idly by and let,
quarter of the planet? No, that's only like a couple hundred miles at best.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, it's such a funny thing to, like, raise the alarm about. Like, it's something that it's like, so could you imagine something like this between Texas and the Panama Canal? How will we survive?
Can you imagine something like that between here in New Jersey and the Antarctic happening? All right.
Okay, this comment: the Panama Canal, which you famously have to go to by land. Yeah, we have no choice but to pass through communist Guatemala.
I forget. It's Guatemala on the east or west coast?
West Coast. Well,
West Coast. All right. So no, it's technically, like,
Caribbean. It has Caribbean and Pacific
Yeah, we can't have Guatemala being influenced by communist China, across the Pacific Ocean. Others warned that Guatemala could become a base from which the Soviet Union might actually seize the canal. Senator Margaret Chase Smith, 3 first names, hinted unmistakably
Never trust.
unmistakably that the, quote, unjustified increases in the price of coffee imported from Guatemala were due to communist control of the country and called for an investigation. And so it went.
Little mask off moment from the senator there, being like, but actually, have you guys thought about what the fuck this is going to do to coffee?
I mean, it's not. People always try to act as if, real mask off moment when they say some, horrific fucking, fucking vile ghoul shit. But it kind of just feels like if you just watch C-SPAN or something, if you wake up early enough to watch C-SPAN in the morning with left flank vets, right, you'll see that, people in politics say all kinds of ghoulish shit all the fucking time. And I have a feeling that, it used to be even worse. And especially at this time, if C-SPAN was around, in, the fucking 50s, you'd probably see them saying all kinds of shit, we can't, treat the Spanish like they're
My
people.
children eat bananas every morning.
My wife loves bananas.
You expect me to spend more than a quarter on bananas?
By God, if we have to kill every last Guatemalan
for my son to have $25 bananas. And
of course, 25 cents for a banana, I guess, back then, that would have been what,
back then, I feel like back in the 1950s, you could probably get, a bushel of bananas for a quarter. That's just how I feel.
Leah, but, wouldn't, a quarter be, $15 today or something? I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like
a nickel. I don't know.
Yeah. It's if I have to pay more than a nickel for 3 pounds of coffee.
I say kill every goddamn Guatemalan on the planet. Get rid of all of them.
Put them all in chains.
Put them in jail. All right. So the Soviet Union could be excused if it was somewhat bewildered by all the rhetoric. For the Russians had scant interest in Guatemala. Did not provide the country. Sometimes I can't stand William Blum's writing style.
Dude, honestly, it's kind of mid. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Compared to a Perenni or a Rashad or a Lacerda.
Dude, even Horn. It's just he likes fucking just spicing it up with an SAT word that you gotta look up in the fucking dictionary.
I feel like you could just write a very straightforward sentence about this and it would hit perfectly, but he's trying to put this sentence together. Let me read it again. The Soviet Union could be excused if it was somewhat bewildered by all the rhetoric. For the Russians had scant interest in Guatemala, did not provide the country with any kind of military assistance. Did not even maintain diplomatic relations with it, thus did not have the normally indispensable embassy from which to conduct such nefarious schemes.
I get what he's doing.
Yeah, and I understand what he's saying in that sentence, but I just thought you could probably just be a little bit more straightforward.
Dude, I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm a great talker, I can talk great. As far as writing and shit.
When you write, yeah.
Yeah, no, dude, I try to write the same way that I talk, and it does not translate well. I'm a fucking horrendous writer.
I actually like writing quite a bit, and I think every writer goes through this phase where you start getting really juiced on your own writing.
Yeah.
So you just start making you use way too many big words in one sentence, and it's dude, if you just dumbed this down and just a little bit more streamlined,
right?
It would sound so much better when someone reads it, but you're trying to be the most impressive writer that you could possibly be. Everything's so poetic, and you have to use the most eccentric word for every single thing, and eventually you're and then you kind of progress through that stage of writing, and you sometimes realize that less is kind of more.
I think out of
who I am criticize this man who has many books published and I have none. Books that are reclaimed by Osama bin Laden.
I'm just saying that out of all the books that we have read, I would say the most baseline that I don't have a voice associated with it, and I don't know if that's because we just don't watch a whole lot of videos by Hickel. But I would say Hickel has the most straightforward, the best writing, where it's just
writing from a Shakespearean sense, but just in a sense of if you want to pick up a book and learn.
Yeah, exactly.
It goes down so easy. That's what I say about Perenni. I tell people Perenni goes down like water.
Yeah.
There's certain people that you have to read a page twice to really understand it. Sometimes it feels like you're reading through mud and everything's hard. Perenni, it's like you just read 20 pages and you're like, oh my god, like I could finish this whole book right now. It's just such a easy on the brain read where you're just learning.
There's like little sarcastic bits, and you know where it's sarcastic. You know,
You don't even have to hear it. Sorry, I'm turning my fan on.
No, you're good. It's so fucking nice out. I do not blame you at all. I got like every window and door open in the fucking apartment right now.
Sam, what's up? All right, so we took a little off turn there just to kind of criticize William Blum's writing a little bit, talk about how funny is, blah blah blah. You know, it'll always happen. Normally in this, okay. So what he's saying is that they didn't even have a Soviet embassy. There was no evidence of any Soviet influence over Guatemala. This was a completely indigenous, and by say indigenous, I just meant within the country. I don't mean exactly the indigenous, but you know what I'm saying. It was an organic grassroots revolution that wasn't even necessarily like Leninist or like anything like that. It was not like a massive like campaign like that.
The most you could argue is that it was like mildly like old school Marxist.
Right, and you know we already went over the evidence of where our Benz was influenced by communists, by Marx and Marxism, and even Lenin and Stalin to a degree, who he was, according to his wife, he read and was very inspired by, and also that he was very friendly with a lot of communists. They were his closest confidants, and also they were his advisors in government because they were the most dedicated, honest, and impassioned supporters of his land reform program. So it was only like, you know, it makes sense why his cabinet wasn't full of a bunch of reactionary ghouls who like just shill for the United Fruit Company. With the things that the changes that he wanted to impose on Guatemala were supported by labor unions, farmers, communists, students who were communist, like, you know what I mean?
Indigenous people.
These were the things his support base. So he had a number of communists as close friends and as political advisors. We'll get to more of that in a second. So during this period, the height of McCarthyist logic, there were undoubtedly those Americans who reasoned all the better to deceive us. This is funny. So all that thing is like, there was no Soviet embassy. There's no evidence of them.
Is there even a fucking letter from the fucking Soviets? Like,
all the better to deceive us. The reason that there's so little evidence is because why no evidence? Have you thought about that? Like just that like
seems suspicious, no?
Exactly, just that poison. Like, you know, when you go into, like, you know, when you leave for I imagine if you're a parent and you leave for the weekend and you come home and your house is too clean. And you're like, you had a party here, didn't you? Because why did you clean the house so much? Why would you clean?
Why is everything?
That's the McCarthyist logic of Guatemala. They go in there, they're like, why is this place so free of communism? Why are the Soviets not here?
Everything's less messy than it was before I left. You did something.
You did something. You had Soviets here. With the exception of one occasion, the countries of Eastern Europe had as little to do with Guatemala as did the Soviet Union. A month before the coup, that is, long after Washington had begun preparation for it, Czechoslovakia made a single arms sale to Guatemala for cash, something that Czechs would no doubt have done for any other country willing to pay the price. The weapons, it turned out, were, in the words of the New York Times, worthless military junk. Time magazine poo-pooed the newspaper's report and cited U.S. military men giving a better appraisal of the weapons. It may be that neither Time nor the military men could conceive that one of the members of the International Communist Conspiracy could do such a thing to another member.
Here's some shitty fucking Tokarevs and,
It was actually Nazi weaponry that Czechoslovakia had, like, seized and just had, and they saw. Can you open the Wikipedia article? Because I felt like this should have been expanded on just a little bit more, and we're going to do that. So this is the boat, the MS Effelhem. So... And as it came out, this was right before the coup. So this is at the point where the wolves were at the door. Our Ben saw the writing on the wall. He knew this was coming, so he wanted to get a bunch of guns so that he could arm people. He wanted to start a people's militia to prevent the coming invasion by the CIA proxy army. So the MS Effelhem was a Scandinavian cargo ship that was built in 1930 and traded for more than 30 years. In her career, she passed through 5 successive owners, managers, and names. Effelhem is her 4th name and is the one by which she is most widely known. In 1954, the CIA was engineering a coup d'etat in Guatemala to replace the elected civilian president of President Jacob Arbenz with a military dictator, Colonel Carlos Castillo. Since 1951, the U.S. had withheld arms supplies to the Guatemalan government, and in 1953, the U.S. blocked Guatemalan government attempts to buy arms from Canada, Germany, and Rhodesia. So they were doing their best to get guns from somewhere. In the spring of 1954, the CIA operation campaign is well underway at this point. In the spring of 1954, Guatemala bought 2,000 tons of arms and ammunition from the Czechoslovakia Socialist Republic and used the AFLEM to ship them to Puerto Barrios, Guatemala. The U.S. regarded AFLEM's success in evading U.S. sea and air patrols to deliver the munitions as a setback. However, it did not prevent the CIA from executing Operation PB Success against Guatemala. So go down a little bit. Forget owners and names. Arms to Guatemala.
I don't know. I feel like the fact that it was owned by a Swede is something we should not
look into that.
Brush over. Also, Grom, if you're still awake, are we even pronouncing this right? Is it Affelheim or Alfum? Alfum.
So in spring 1954, AFLEM loaded her Czech weapons cargo in the Baltic port of Szczecin. She then took a zigzag course, first towards Dakar in West Africa, which is now Senegal, then across the Atlantic towards Curacao in the Dutch West Indies, later redirected to Puerto Cortes, Honduras, blah, blah, blah. It gets to Guatemala City in 1954. Go down. In an attempt to conceal her use of the arms shipment to Guatemala, the Czechoslovakia government had paid for a straw charter. They were trying to be sneaky so the guns could get there. Go down. So AFLEM delivered 2,000 tons of arms and ammunition, more than all Central America had received in the previous 30 years. According to a Time magazine, the weapons allegedly worth $10 million were thought to be from the Czechoslovakia's famous Skoda munitions works and were believed to be primarily rifles, automatic arms, mortars, and light artillery. Described by the ship's manifest as steel rods, optical glass, and laboratory supplies is what they put it as. Under the supervision of the country's defense minister, the weapons were unloaded from AFLEM and loaded onto freight cars on the U.S.-controlled IRCA, which was owned by United Fruit Company, for shipment to the capital 197 miles away. Protected by armed guards, the weapons made their way to the destination. Anti-government rebels tried to stop the arms shipment by derailing a railway trestle just as the munitions train crossed. However, a downpour of rain entrenched the fuses, and this dynamite did not detonate as planned. A gun battle followed, which one government soldier and one rebel were killed. Go down. The CIA's chief of clandestine operations, Frank Wisner, a.k.a. the Wiz, was annoyed that the U.S. Navy failed to intercept AFLEM, that is, until he realized that the shipment of weaponry was just the excuse that the United States needed to intervene. So the United States tried to stop these weapons, but then they realized this is the smoking gun that we've needed all along. So it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy where essentially they were like, you're in bed with the Soviets, you're in bed with the Soviets, you're in bed with the Soviets. Knowing there's an invasion coming, he's like, all right, well, can I buy guns from Canada? And they're like, no. Can I buy guns from Germany? No. Can I buy guns from Rhodesia? No. So there's only
from apartheid Rhodesia?
Yeah, there's only one place left where you can get guns from, and it's from somewhere in the Soviet bloc.
Right.
So that's the only person that'll do business with you outside of an American blockade. Then this becomes the smoking gun. It's like I said, a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think this happened with Lumumba also, where it's like you can't do business with anyone. Who's the only one that'll go under the Americans' nose and sell to you?
Soviets.
You say, you're in bed with Soviets. You're in bed with Soviets. You're in bed with the Soviets. Then you can do trade with literally no one in the world other than the Soviets who don't care about the blockade. Then it's like, see, we told you all along. They were in bed with the Soviets.
I mean, look, even when we get into like the 60s, with Nkrumah and with Nasser, right? Like, they don't exactly have like they like don't really give a shit about the Soviets, but it's just like if the West, right?
They don't hate. It's about being non-aligned.
Right.
It's not about hating the Soviet Union or working for the Soviet Union. It's about doing what's best for Africa or your African.
And I think that look, as somebody that says they're an ML, right? Like, we need to chill when we're like trying to say that like Nkrumah was like a Marxist-Leninist, or is it like Nasser was like a Marxist, or all these other people that were like decolonial. Like, they have their own fucking thing that they were doing, and they were non-aligned, and that should be respected. And
definitely Nkrumah more than Nasser.
Definitely Nkrumah more than Nasser, but like it still should be respected, and it should still be kind of like recognized for what it was, and it was a relationship of convenience.
All right. So, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff held an emergency session, discussed whether or not to deploy U.S. troops to Honduras to assist the country attacked by Guatemala. The Pentagon meeting illustrated the U.S. Army Chief General Matthew Ridgway opposed this plan and recommended instead the Nicaraguan General Somoza. We'll get more into him. Go down. Let me see if there's anything else that I need out of this.
I think Bevins mentioned something about Guatemala in the Jakarta method, but I think he concentrates actually more on Brazil than he does
They spray paint they spray paint Jakarta on the walls of Brazil as they're going around rounding up communists to kill because it was the inspiration. We're going to read that book one day.
Yeah, we will.
Right.
We will.
So we can get out of here. I just wanted to go over this Effelheim situation and explain why there was actually socialist, not even Soviet guns in Guatemala at one point, but it was way past the 11th hour that this actually happened.
Yeah. And again, like, you know, the guns were kind of shit.
And they were garbage guns. Czechoslovakia was a real dick about that. And also, I read also that it was actually a Polish leak that told them about the situation. And I wonder if it was that, remember that turncoat guy?
Yeah.
I wonder if it was that guy that turned over the information.
Oh, bro, it might be.
I didn't really have enough time to look into the exact dates to see if that linked up, but I would not be surprised if his name was like Sozwarto or something.
Swilato or something. Swialto.
I can't remember his actual name.
But like,
he was a turncoat that was giving, like a double agent essentially.
Yeah, no, because he got that other dude and his brother and sister-in-law, or the dude and his wife and his brother-in-law or something, arrested in like Hungary. So it's not out of the question that maybe he had some links in.
But it left a port in Poland.
Right.
It traveled through Poland, so he wouldn't even necessarily need
the
link.
Yeah. No, not Suharto. It's Swialto or something Polish. He was the guy that got that spy, the really cool one from your city, your people. He was from like Boston, right?
Swiatlo.
The guy that Swilato fucked over, you know? He was like that Boston guy that was like, you know, chill.
Yeah. Swiatlo is his name.
Something like that. I don't know. We're not Polish. We don't know how to pronounce it.
I'm looking at it right now. Swiatlo. Joseph Swiatlo.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't care.
They're always pronouncing shit weird. Nonetheless, Washington repeatedly and adamantly expressed its displeasure about the presence of communists working in the Guatemalan government and their active participation in the nation's political life. Arbenz maintained that this was no more than a proper democracy, while Washington continued to insist that Arbenz was too tolerant of such people, not because of anything they had done which was intrinsically threatening or offensive to the U.S. or Western civilization, but simply because they were of the species communist, well known for its infinite capacity for treachery. Ambassador Purefoy, a diplomat whose suit might have been pinstriped, but whose soul was a loud Czech.
I don't know what that means.
I have no fucking idea what that means. I have no fucking idea.
I get what you're trying to say, that like, you know, his soul was like black or something like that, but yeah.
Fuck if I know. Warned Arbenz that U.S.-Guatemalan relations would remain strained so long as a single communist remained on the public payroll.
Right. So this is go forward.
I kind of almost want to Google it and be like, what does...
Okay. So, just look up what loud Czech is. So I've put in some various snips from books that I own in here. I believe that this one is from Shattered Hope, which is probably my single favorite book on Guatemalan history, if anybody's interested. Shattered Hope by Piero Gleizes. Fucking great book. These were... It was not untrue that there was communists in his government. This is not something that was a fabrication. There was people like Fortuny and Gutierrez who were both friends of Arbenz, advisors to Arbenz, and leaders in the Communist Party and the labor associations of Guatemala. This is not unfactual. But they weren't like bad guys. Like these were like very much like, if you look into their records, these aren't like like these were just people that were trying to push forward like labor unions and cooperatives in the indigenous areas.
The Soviets convinced the Angolan.
What is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. You can hear that?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I thought it was only going to play on my earbuds. I'm trying to figure out how Gleizes pronounces his name.
It doesn't matter. So
All
let's
right,
go forward here. And thank you, Sam. Yes, the PDF for the book is in the Discord. Please join the Discord. So, as we know, the centerpiece of Arbenz's program was land reform, known as Decree 900. The need for it was clearly expressed in the all too familiar underdeveloped country statistics. We all went over these before, but we're going to do a quick refresher on them. In a nation overwhelmingly rural, 2.2% of the landowners owned 70% of the arable land. The annual per capita income of agricultural workers was $87. That's per year. Before the revolution of 1944, which overthrew the Ubico dictatorship, farm laborers had been roped together by the army for delivery to the lowland farms where they were kept in debt slavery by the landowners. This is what I was talking about before with the vagrancy laws that were effectively forced labor laws, the expropriation of large tracts of uncultivated acreage, which was distributed to approximately 100,000 landless peasants, the improvement in union rights for the workers, and other social reforms were the reasons Arbenz had won the support of communists and other leftists, which was no more than to be expected, as I said before. When Arbenz was criticized for accepting communist support, he challenged the critics to prove their good faith by backing his reforms themselves. They failed to do so, thus revealing were the basis of their criticism. So again, as you see here, he's like, oh, okay, fine, you don't want communists here? How about you help me do this?
Right.
And they're like, no.
I don't want that.
Well, the communists are all I got. You know what I mean? and I'm not getting rid of my boys.
Exactly.
Yeah, Red Wizard. I do have that book. It's called Conflicting Missions. I have that book. I haven't read it yet. It's kind of big. And I just
there's like two of them, or two, right?
Yeah.
And
one I have is called Conflicting Missions.
And you should know, Red Wizard, before you get into Clay Jesus' work, right? This man has more citations than you would ever believe for any other book.
Sometimes like half the page is a citation. Look, here's one right here.
Yeah.
I just opened it up. Look, do you see that?
Yeah.
See that separation?
Yeah.
This is the start of the citations.
Yeah.
And this is the page. And look, that's on both of these pages. Look.
Yeah.
This is citations, and this is citations.
Yeah. And my man does not fuck around. He uses CIA. Somehow he's able to get like CIA records as well as Cuban and Soviet records.
Yeah, and not only that, in this book, he actually does an interview with Marie Villanova, who was Jacobo Arbenz's widow. He does, if that person that I just brought up, that was in the Communist Party, Fortuny, he does a full interview with him in this. So he really just goes into the well of primary and secondary sources it's really impressive.
The party formed by the communists, the Guatemalan Labor Party, held 4 seats in the Congress. The smallest component of Arbenz's ruling coalition. Oh, yeah. I am on a treadmill. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's distracting for people or not, but I'll get to it in a minute. The smallest component of Arbenz's ruling coalition, which commanded a total of 51 seats in the 1953-54 legislature. Communists held several important sub-cabinet posts, but none was ever appointed to the cabinet. In addition, there were communists employed in the bureaucracy, particularly in the administration of land reform.
Can't keep the communists away from that land reform, man.
Probably where they wanted to be anyways.
if you're putting in your application to the Guatemalan government and you're a communist and they're like, you want land reform?
Yes, please.
Yes, sounds good.
Lacking anything of substance they could accuse the Guatemalan left of, Washington officials were reduced to condemnation by semantics. Thus, communists, unlike normal human beings, did not take jobs in the government, they infiltrated the government. Communists did not support a particular program, they exploited it. Communists did not back Arbenz, they used him. Moreover, communists controlled the labor movement and land reform. But what type of person is it who devotes himself in an underdeveloped country to furthering the welfare of workers and peasants? None other than the type that Washington calls communist. Yeah, I tried to give it a little Parenti pizzazz.
Good. I appreciated that, actually. It was Parenti-esque, the ghost of Perenity. I always say the ghost of him. I probably shouldn't say that.
No, not yet. Although, his son is, we'll talk about it later. But, yeah I'm on the treadmill because David...
You don't have to make fucking excuses.
No, I'm not making excuses. No, I think it's a good thing, and I think that, everybody, right, that, is on here, we need to get up, we need to get the blood moving a little bit. Michael Brooks, he died of, a blood clot, because he was sitting at the computer all day long, or sitting in front of the screen, or sitting in front of the camera doing the Majority Report or whatever fucking show it was, and writing the articles and the books and stuff, and he died of a fucking blood clot. I don't want that.
Yeah, HTA PhD, it's hard to really tell when you say, I love how these ghouls view any bit of altruism as a devious plot. It's hard to really tell where the conspiracy starts, and like it's hard to tell who uses it as a cover of their economic interests to just be like, oh, we have to just use it, or those that are actually under like the McCarthyist influence of like that have actually been like baited into this delusion of just like fighting against everything like this happens. It's hard to tell who is like just like a liar in the sense where it's like, well, we have to say it's communism, say it's all bad, because if not, it's going to affect the bottom line. The United Fruit isn't going to be able to make as much money. And then there's the other people who are actually just completely living outside of reality into this like McCarthy pilled existence of just like, it's bad, it's communism, like, and actually believe that in their soul. It's hard to tell who's.
Just get back from practice diving on the ground for an hour, but I'm still gonna walk. What, are you doing BJJ, Tay?
Yeah. What is that? Is that jujitsu? What are you talking
You doing jujitsu? You doing rolls?
All right. Lacking. Okay. Yeah. Right. We're good. The basic idea behind the employment of such language, which was standard Western fare throughout the Cold War, was to deny the idea that communists could be people sincerely concerned about social change. That's the part right there. American officials denied it to each other as well as to the world. Here, for example, is an excerpt from a CIA report about Guatemala prepared in 1952 for the edification of the White House and the intelligence community. Communist political success derives in general from the ability of individual communists and fellow travelers to identify themselves with the nationalist and social aspirations of the revolution of 1944. In this manner, they have been successful in infiltrating the administration and pro-administration political parties and have gained control of organized labor. Arbenz is essentially an opportunist whose politics are largely a matter of historical accident. The extension of communist influence has been facilitated by the applicability of Marxist cliches to the anti-colonial and social aims of the Guatemalan Revolution. It's like weird how like anti-colonial and Marxist cliches somehow have this
weird popularity, like
that they're connected with one another. I just love that first sentence. Like the basic idea is that it's to deny that any communist could be people sincerely concerned about social change.
Right.
Like that if there's any like actually great like literacy program or land reform program or political campaign that has communist support, it's like, hold on, this has to be some kind of like a devious conspiracy. There's no way that they could actually care about the material concerns of the lowest rung of society. That just because in their ghoulish mind, they never have that thought. They never have that sympathy for poor people. So when a communist expresses such a feeling, they're like, this can't be real. There has to be an agenda here. Because the only time I give to charity is when there's a monetary or a power dynamic benefit to me.
Right.
So they have to be doing the same
right.
thing.
Well, I mean, it's like Parenti says throughout all of his work is that, like, why the fuck would communists go if they're interested in is power and accumulating power, right?
Castro could have had that in Cuba if he just linked up with the United States.
Right.
It's simple. Arbenz could have done it. Arbenz could have been like, yeah, fuck all this. United States, what's good?
Yeah.
How much are you paying me?
Right.
How much are you paying me?
Like, why would we give a fuck about, like, the most powerless, the most, like, rough-shod, fucking people that you can find? Makes no fucking sense. That's a sick shirt, Wiz.
As if Castro died with more money in his pocket because of being a communist than he would if he just like cozied up to American business interests.
Honestly, like, he wouldn't even have to do the revolution. He literally could have just not done the revolution at all. He was from a wealthy family. He was a lawyer, and he literally went out of his way to represent, Afro-Cubans, right, and campesinos. Like, he could have just represented, like, sugar farms or fucking, like, mafiosos, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's literally all he would have had to do. And also, Tay, I think it's great that you're teaching people, how to be goalies for soccer or football.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
That's awesome. And should be
I
celebrated.
don't know if he was a pro baseball player, but there's definitely pictures of him basketball. I think he was boxing.
Who, Fidel?
Fidel, yeah.
Oh, dude, we've definitely done this before, but remember I showed you the diary entry of like Shay getting like really pissed off about Fidel's his Euro step, right? Where he does like the like extended step, yeah. And he's like, "No, that's fucked up. You're doing it wrong." It's just like, Shay, chill. It's just basketball. Like, it's not that big a deal. He's like, "No, it's the principles, man."
All right.
The first plan to topple Arbenz was a CIA operation approved by President Truman in 1952, but at the 11th hour, Secretary of State Dean Acheson persuaded Truman to abort it. However, soon after Eisenhower became president in January 1953, the plan was resurrected. Both administrations were pressured by executives of United Fruit Company, much of whose vast and uncultivated land in Guatemala had been expropriated by the Arbenz government as part of the land reform program. The company wanted nearly $16 million for the land. The government was offering $525,000. United Fruit's own declared valuation for tax purposes.
Okay, there's a lot to go into here on this one. So, this first thing, we all know, or most of us probably know, have heard of this thing called Operation PB Success. Operation PB Success was the United States coup that did ultimately topple Arbenz. But prior to this, that was an Eisenhower campaign. This operation, which was under Truman, who Truman initially signed off on, was called Operation PB Fortune. It was the predecessor to PB Success. So keep that in mind. Now, it also says that Dean Acheson persuaded Truman to abort it. There's a little bit more detail. There's actually a blunder on the CIA that we're going to get to in 1 second that actually kind of unraveled it. Both administrations were pressured by the United Fruit Company, who was lobbying the government to assist them in saving the land that was being expropriated from them. So then, I just love this last part. The company wanted $16 million for the land that was being
that's a lot of money back then.
And the government was like, okay, $16 million. Our counteroffer is $525,000. Because we have these little documents right here that you've been using in our country. You've underdeclared your land for decades at this point, so that you couldn't even pay your meager tax responsibility back into this country that you've been exploiting as your personal fiefdom for decades. And they're like, this is completely fucking unacceptable.
I can't believe what's happening right now. Why is this Guatemalan fucking saying these things to us?
Yeah.
How dare he?
I am victimized. I am a victim here. United States, you have to help us. We're being bullied by Guatemalans.
And the Dulles brothers are just like, we can make.
So here it is, real quick. This is Operation PB Fortune, the predecessor to PB Success.
I just gotta grab water real quick.
What?
I'll be right back. I just gotta.
Yeah. So Operation PB Fortune, and in April 1952, Nicaraguan President Anastasio Somoza, and by president they should say dictator, we'll get more into him in a little bit, visited the United States and expressed confidence in his ability to overthrow Arbenz. The Nicaraguan dictator mentioned that given the chance to receive arms and supplies, he could orchestrate Arbenz's overthrow with the help of Guatemalan exile Castillo Armas. His hubris caught the attention of the U.S. government, who had already been conceiving ideas on how to deal with possible uprising of communism in Guatemala, America's own backyard. Isn't it funny how far America's backyard extends? Let's see here. President Truman contracted Director of Intelligence Walter Bedell Smith to explore options with Armas. Smith ordered an agent codenamed Siegfried to make contact with Armas about the possibilities of moving forward. After a report came back to the CIA from Siegfried, Deputy Director Alan Dulles of the Dulles brothers drafted a formal proposal to provide $225,000 worth of arms and ammunition to Armas. It also specified plans to enlist air support from Nicaragua and Honduras. On June 17th, Arbenz enacted the Agrarian Reform Law, also known as Decree 900, and distribution of land under it began August 7th, so almost immediately. On September 9th, 1952, the plan was officially approved and named Operation PB Fortune. It was the first official plan proposed by the CIA and approved by the State Department that sought to overthrow the Arbenz government. A couple of months of planning went into creating a list of officials to be targeted for assassination. So this was more than just kind of like maybe what you want to call it, like a cold coup or a soft coup. The CIA, in collusion with Castillo Armas, was making lists of execution. that they would be implementing to Guatemalan officials and labor organizers and otherwise communists or those suspected of communism. The plan relied on 1949 Guatemalan Army list of communists in tandem with the CIA's own collected intelligence. Armas also provided his own list of 58 Guatemalans to be terminated through executive action, which means execution. On September 18, 1952, Siegfried received contact with General Rafael Trujillo, the dictator of the Dominican Republic, who agreed to aid the operations. Armas began training a special operative team to carry out the overthrow of Arbenz government. However, the cover was blown and the plan was terminated before it could ever be carried out. In the later months of 1952, shortly after Operation PB Fortune was terminated, the CIA continued to monitor events in Guatemala and collected information that suggested assassination plots were still being concocted by Guatemalan dissidents. In December 1952, the Guatemalan Communist Party was legalized by Arbenz in the country, and workers at the United Fruit Company's Tecate plantation filed for seizure of around 50,000 acres of land. The United Fruit Company, a U.S. company, had seized large amounts of land in Guatemala, leaving little land for local Guatemalans regarding housing and other land usage. The idea of assassinations were mentioned, but only at a general level. Conversations between an opposition leader in Guatemala and CIA agent Siegfried confirmed that Armas had still been planning assassinations of leading political and military leaders. Armas had developed a special K group with the objective to kill all political and military leaders associated with Arbenz. It was also reported that Nicaraguan, Honduran, and Salvadorian soldiers wearing civilian clothes planned to assassinate communist leaders. So this is before Operation PB Success. This is before Eisenhower. This is under Truman, where the CIA was colluding with Guatemalan exiles, sound familiar, Bay of Pigs, to even the Greek communists, to not only overthrow Arbenz, but to assassinate a number of people, really bringing this into a much darker and more nefarious level, where the CIA had its own list of communists, along with communists by the Guatemalan army, and then Armas himself added a list of 58 Guatemalans to be terminated. So, and this was signed off on by Truman, that like, okay, yeah, great, top of the guy, kill a couple hundred people, whatever you got to do. So go forward. Now, it's
as long as the coffee and bananas keep coming.
Yeah, yes, it's a bunch of coffee and bananas on his desk. This is from Shattered Hope, the book that we talked about earlier, and that is in the PDF library on our Discord. This actually talks a little bit more about how they fumbled this one, and it's pretty funny. As summer faded into autumn, the plotters pressed forward with their preparations. The arms were gathered. A representative of the United Fruit Company in Nicaragua was assigned to receive them. So also, this just goes to show the collusion between the United States and the United Fruit Company, that the arms and everything like that was being directly transported through the United Fruit Company. It was through the banana boats that they were bringing in the guns to carry out this coup. Dumb fuck was banned from.
This doesn't even make any sense, man.
The United Fruit turned over one of its freighters, which had been specifically refitted for this purpose. So the Great White Fleet. Two leaders of the stevedores in New Orleans had to be told about it. The arms were loaded into the ship as agricultural machinery in cases, and the ship sailed for Nicaragua. The ship was still en route when Dean Acheson, learned of the plot. A CIA representative went to Miller and asked him to initial paper on behalf of the munitions department of the State Department. Miller refused and showed the document to Deputy Undersecretary Doc Freeman Matthews and David Bruce, Undersecretary of State, both of whom hit the ceiling, went to Acheson, who went to Truman, and the message was sent redirecting the ship to Panama, where the arms were unloading. So just a big blunder there on that one. They really let the cat out of the bag there with the stevedores in New Orleans. Somebody was like, hey, can you sign off on all these weapons? And somebody was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I continue to be mystified by the amount of effort the U.S. has gone through to disrupt and destroy. Busy fucking up everything, everywhere, all at once. Well, I mean, like, that's the thing is, I actually, over the Easter holiday, got into, like, a huge argument with, like, my family, because, you know, Pat, he might be, like, a little bit of, like, a debate guy, like, you know, here on Twitch, maybe, or just, you know, like, in general. I am very not debate guy until you, like, get me in a room with my family, in which case it's like...
and then it's scorched earth.
All right, I don't care. We're burning bridges tonight. Happy Easter. He is risen. All right? Like... But, like, you know, that, like, around the world, right, there's nary a corner, nary a place untouched by the light of God where America has not been, like... Who can we murder here to make things go our way?
Did you hear about the Dalai Lama trying to get some kid to?
Oh, dude, you had to suck his fucking tongue. What the fuck? I don't give a fuck, dude. All that Lama shit is fucking weird. All right, like I'm all about like the teachings of the Buddha and shit. Tell me where fucking Siddhartha talks about how it's like, oh yeah, you gotta get like little boys to suck on your tongue and shit. Tell me which fucking sutra that's in, huh?
I'm sorry to bring that up right now, but I didn't want to forget about it. But I wanted to make sure I brought it.
Bro, fuck Dalai Lama. All right.
I saw like really large news media posting about that, and I was like, holy shit.
Nah. Chill. It's not just the fucking Catholic Church. We've talked about this. It's like every single fucking one of them. But like, I'm telling you right now, you go to any Buddhist fucking temple in the U.S., right? And especially if they got like a Tibetan guy in there, I promise you that there's some kind of sex allegation going on there, or there has been. What were you gonna say,
so
Pat?
Funny that this is like the final nail in the coffin to the Dalai Lama image. Like he maintained for so long, of being like some kind of like a darling of the United States, or some kind of like larger than life image of like transcendent kindness. Like you know what I mean? Like it's almost like Einstein. You know, if you're like mocking somebody for being smart, you'd be like, you know, if somebody gives $1 to a homeless man, they're like, oh, what is this, the Dalai Lama over here? Like so like that was like the deity that he had kind of became, and now they're like, he said what? He wanted a kid. And also, how weird is it to like be like, all right, kid, now suck my tongue. Like,
all right, kid, now suck my tongue a little. Fucking, and look, it's not, I'm not trying to say that like, you know, all religions are bad or any kind of argument like that. All right. I think that religion is fucking dope. All right. Yeah. I think that there is not a single organized religion in the world, right, that doesn't have to operate within, you know, a global capitalist system that kind of betrays a lot of, like, you know, what the foundational teachings are. And you can say that for just about any religion, right? And it's not just, you know, capitalism, but just like, you know, governments will capture, much like how the language of like social justice a lot of times will get captured by people like within governments and stuff, and it'll be used in a way to bastardize and betray the original sentiments of it. Well, take that back to like ancient Aramaic, or to ancient Rome, or like, you know, fucking let's like, you know, talk about like, you know, the Abbasid Caliphate or any of this other shit. Like, you're gonna have governments that are going to bastardize the foundational teachings of the faith in order to influence people to make the way your economy benefits those at the top work. All right. And the whole like you know, new age atheism or whatever it's called. What are they called? New atheists or something? Oh, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris or something. It's really appealing when you live in the West to kind of like rebel against like the Western interpretation of religion, and it feels real good to do that. And there's certain merit to that also. But when you start traveling the world a little bit, and you like, you know, I've been to Saudi Arabia, I've been to India, I've been to Guatemala, I've been to places where there is like very, very religious people, and like you start feeling way lamer, being like, you guys are stupid. I used to be like that. I was once that. And then you're just like, oh, geez. You're like, you know what I mean? Like it really starts opening your eyes up. And then like, you know, I've been a part of like certain like, you know, just from, because like a lot of times when you visit other countries, sometimes there's like these, like in Guatemala, for example, in Antigua, there's like these massive old Catholic churches there that survived the earthquake. And there's also ruins of them that were destroyed in the earthquake that you could visit. And when you go there, you're like, holy shit, this is like, you know, so powerful. So, yeah. Yeah, plus, like, you know, no religion talk. Again, you know, fucking liberation theology is fucking lit. As always. This devotion isn't, hey, kids, suck my tongue. Yeah, exactly. You know, or like Wilco says, or you can stay right home, read history, and understand we wouldn't have been able to organize for much of civil rights, workers' rights, without utilizing Black Baptist churches. Facts. Those are facts. Can't deny the fact. Harris isn't an atheist. He's just racist against Muslims. Yeah, exactly. He's just like, what is the best vehicle for my bigotry against this? Oh, how can I be intellectually? Like nobody will. I'm pretty sure, didn't he have the people from the Bell Curve on his podcast at one point? I'm like almost certain of it. He reminds me a lot of, and this is a little bit of... What's the guy's name? Murray? I think the author's name is Murray. Something like that. There are people leaving religion who need help and support in the process of deconversion. It's a trauma for many. People have fear of hell even after leaving religion. Here's the thing, though, is that, like, you know, when it comes to, like, you know, people leaving a religion, a lot of times it's less religion and more cultish, and it's like being used as like a way of systemic abuse, right? When people are literally, like, you know, needing to recover from like the trauma of having faith shouldn't leave you traumatized, right? And worrying that, like, you know, wearing the wrong clothes will send you to hell, right? I think if, like, you know, that if you have a faith in God, right? I do, right? I don't think, like, you know, eating the wrong things, or, like, you know, wearing the wrong things, or, you know, loving
having sex with the wrong people.
Right, having sex with the wrong people, so long as it's a, you know, consensual, like, you know, adult relationship, right? I don't think that, you know, God gives a shit about any of that.
Yep. All right. Let's get back to the regularly scheduled discussion.
You're right. Otherwise, this will be like
no.
You're right. No, it's fine. But
it was my fault.
we'll save stuff like that for after we're done with the chapter.
Yeah.
And YouTube people, you know, you're just gonna have to come on in here. You know, you're gonna have to make it here someday to get that extra little sweet content. So
this is you.
United Fruit functioned in Guatemala as a state within a state. Oh. It owned the country's telephone and telegraph facilities, administered its only important Atlantic harbor, and monopolized its banana exports. A subsidiary of the company owned nearly every mile of railroad track in the country. The fruit company's influence amongst Washington's power elite was equally impressive. On a business and or personal level, it had close ties to the Dulles brothers. Various State Department officials, congressmen, the American ambassador to the United Nations, and others. Ann Whitman, the wife of the company's public relations director, was President Eisenhower's personal secretary. Undersecretary of State and formerly director of the CIA, Walter Bedell Smith. I don't think that's 3 first names. I don't know if Bedell would be a first name.
It could be.
Could be. Yeah.
We're suspicious.
Right, suspicious. Was seeking an executive position within United Fruit at the same time he was helping to plan the coup. He was later named the company's board of directors.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but in the last one, I went through a pretty significant list, like a laundry list of associations between the CIA or the State Department and the United Fruit Company. The list is long. It's longer than what's
it was
even
more
described
than
here,
a dozen
but it's a
people.
little refresher of the incestuous nature and the just absolutely blurred line that exists between State Department actions and multinational corporation interest.
Yeah, no, like, fucking, dude, it was more than a dozen people. That's not like, you know, oh, you know, what a coincidence.
Yeah. Exactly. Under Arbenz, Guatemala constructed an Atlantic port and a highway to compete with United Fruit's holdings. It's so funny that building a port and a highway is like competing. It's like that's like a radical change in the country. It's like and built a hydroelectric plant to offer cheaper energy than the U.S.-controlled electricity monopoly. So, just the subtext to that is that the United States owned the electricity, the United Fruit Company owned the highways, and the only port that they had on the Atlantic. So we have to build these 3 things so as to not be completely monopolized by United States companies. Arbenz's strategy was to limit the power of foreign companies through direct competition rather than through nationalization. A policy not feasible, of course, when it came to the fixed quantity like land. In his inaugural address, Arbenz had stated, "Foreign capital will always be welcome as long as it adjusts to local conditions, remains always subordinate to Guatemalan laws, cooperates with the economic development of the country, and strictly abstains from intervening in the nation's social and political life." This hardly described the United Fruit's role in Guatemala. Amongst much else, the company had persistently endeavored to frustrate Arbenz's reform programs, discredit him and his government, and induce his downfall.
I feel like that's like the playbook, the playbook of like U.S. business relations. Yeah. Is to like literally like, you know, all right, we need to monopolize as much of the industry here. We need to get involved in their politics, and we need to get involved
in telecommunications,
yes,
and their electricity.
We need to make sure that everything that they need, they have to go through us.
Yep.
In March 1953, the CIA approached disgruntled right-wing officers in the Guatemalan army and arranged to send them arms. United Fruit donated $64,000 in cash, and for those of you pulling up the inflation calculator, you already know that's quite a bit of money in 1953. The following month, uprisings broke out in several towns but were quickly put down by loyal troops. The rebels were put on trial and revealed the fruit company's role in the plot, but not the CIA's. The Eisenhower administration resolved to do the job right the next time around. With cynical glee, almost an entire year was spent in painstaking, step-by-step preparation for the overthrow of Jacobo Arbenz Guzman. Of the major CIA undertakings, few have been as well documented as has the coup in Guatemala. With the release of many formerly classified government papers, the following story has emerged. Which is funny because I think you can actually literally look up like a YouTube video of one of the CIA guys that was involved in like orchestrating all this. He's like painting or something, and he's talking about like, yeah, they sent us down there with like a couple guns and told us to, yeah, we're gonna kill the leader of Guatemala. And I was like, all right, whatever. And as he's like painting a happy little tree or some shit. He's doing.
I think I might have missed that one.
I gotta see if I can find it at some point, but shouldn't be that hard to find if you're like just literally typing into YouTube like CIA,
Right.
Guatemala overthrow or something. I think it looks like it's recorded in like the 80s or something.
I believe it. And yeah, HCA PhD Confessions of Economic Hitman give a good playbook for like the IMF style neo-colonial subjugation of countries.
Yeah, no, what the hell was it? Fascist Bob Ross. I feel like a lot of these guys, when they finally like leave the CIA, are just like, I am mentally anguished and tortured by the things that I've done, so I need to pick up some kind of like.
I'm the real victim in all this. All right. Headquarters for the operation was established in Opelika, Florida, which is like in Miami, on the outskirts of Miami. Oh, okay, shit. The Nicaraguan dictator Anastasio Somoza lent/leased his country out as a site for an airstrip for hundreds of men, Guatemalan exiles and U.S. and Central American mercenaries to receive training in the use of weapons and radio broadcasting, as well as in the fine arts of sabotage and demolition. The 30 planes were assigned for use in the Liberation stationed in Nicaragua, Honduras, and the Canal Zone, to be flown by American pilots. The Canal Zone was set aside as a weapons depot from which arms were gradually distributed to the rebels, who were to assemble in Honduras under the command of Colonel Carlos Castillo Armas, before crossing into Guatemala. Soviet-marked weapons were also gathered for the purpose of planting them inside Guatemala before the invasion to reinforce U.S. charges of Russian intervention, and, as important as arms, it turned out, hidden radio transmitters were placed in and around the perimeter of Guatemala, including one in the U.S. Embassy. This is a really funny thing. They like try to hide weapons in Guatemala that have hammers and sickles like crudely stamped on them
Hell
to like
yeah.
be like, look at these, wow, amazing.
like my Mosin Nagant.
Yeah. Yeah, Frank Wisner, that AKA the Wiz, he actually committed suicide like shortly after this, which is interesting. Like the whatever kind of mental toll being this much of a ghoul. It's surprising that more of these people don't do that. Like, isn't there a like thing where like dentists or like have one of the highest suicide rates out of professions? And
Something
it's
like that.
And like it's weird that like CIA operatives aren't a little bit more guilty about the things that they engage in.
I feel like they would hide it more, Like
Yeah,
that's
probably.
a statistic that you're probably not going to be able to find.
So here's a quick little
dentists
video
are-
about Somoza. So this is what everybody needs to keep in mind here, is that while the United States was decrying and vilifying someone like Jacobo Arbenz, this is the people who they were cozying up with to, it is the most hypocritical kind of like doublespeak that someone can engage in. And the United States has just always engaged with throughout all of the Cold War and the ensuing conflicts after the Cold War, of being like, they are a despicable dictator. We have to intervene, while just being like in like direct cooperation or just like negligent neutrality with like people that are just maybe 10 times worse. So just play this so you can learn about the Somoza dictatorship of Nicaragua.
Real quick, WizBiz hit exactly what I was getting at. All dentists are former CIA, because who else is going to be able to understand what somebody is saying while you're literally drilling into their fucking teeth?
I was going to say, yeah, it's like a torture program. Yeah, I know how to pull out teeth.
That is not how you spell dynasty.
Talk about something real quick?
Yeah.
Can you go back a second? Can you look at this cop or whoever it is hitting this dude with a nightstick? And it turns out this cop is like maybe 5'3" or something. And this guy that he's hitting is like turns to him like,
wait a minute.
Look. Yeah, look. Look at this little cop. Hey, look at this dude. Look,
oh, what happened? No, dude, what happened? He pulled out a gun.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
The guy or the cop?
The cop, look.
Oh.
You see that? You see the fucking iron in his hand?
I didn't even see the gun. Yeah, but it's so funny. This dude's like a foot taller than him and kind of turns to him like, bro, wait, you want to go? And then, there's that gun right there.
He's like, wait, hang on a minute.
Holy shit, I didn't even notice the gun.
Yeah. Because I think
do love that guy.
Anastasio. So of course. That was FDR, wasn't it?
So this Somoza. Oh, go ahead. They're gonna. It's almost over.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you wanted me to.
No. Right. So this dictator family that ruled Nicaragua for 44 years. This is who the CIA in the United States, recruited in their campaign for democracy and freedom for Central America until they were overthrown by the Sandinistas in 1979.
Hell yeah.
Is this me?
I have no idea.
Okay. The CIA also made a close study of the records of members of the Guatemalan Officer Corps and offered bribes to some of them. Many of the agency's clandestine radio stations broadcast appeals aimed at military men, as well as others, to join the liberation movement. The station reported that Arbenz was secretly planning to disband or disarm the armed forces and replace it with a people's militia. CIA planes dropped leaflets over Guatemala carrying the same message. Eventually, at Ambassador Purifoy's urging, a group of high-ranking officers called on Arbenz and to ask him to dismiss all communists who held posts in his administration. The president assured them that the communists did not represent a danger, that they did not run the government, and that it would be undemocratic to dismiss them. At a second meeting, the officers also demanded that Arbenz reject the creation of the People's Militia. So this is, Arbenz being true to democratic principles and saying that, like, you want me to dismiss all of these communists from my cabinet, that wouldn't be democratic. I thought you guys said you wanted democracy down here. What am I supposed to just start rejecting people for their political biases? And then also there was the whispering of the creation of a people's militia, which he was. Now, Arbenz was trying to get arms to arm the people in case the CIA-backed invasion forces were to come. So that's not a lie. He was trying to do that, but I don't think he's wrong for doing that. I don't think arming the population and having an active people's militia was necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I think you could kind of tell that, like, I don't think everybody here is on my side. Yeah. Not to mention, like, the whole, like, you know, don't you guys want a democracy? It's like, not like that!
Not like that. That's the wrong democracy.
You're doing it wrong!
Mm-hmm. Oh man, are you able to zoom in on this at all? I didn't realize this would be so small.
I don't know if I can zoom in on it. Oh, Jesus Christ. But I can read it. I don't know if I don't know. Chat.
Right. If you want to read it. Sorry, chat. I didn't realize this would be so small, but I wanted to keep some of the actual CIA documents in there.
You know what?
If you want to break this down first, Johnny. Oh, look at that.
There we go. Look at that. Enhance.
I decided to just throw in some of the documents too, because why not? In August 1953, the Operations Coordinating Board applied CIA to assume responsibility for operations against the Arbenz regime. Appropriate authorization was issued to promote close and prompt cooperation with the Department of Defense, state, and other government agencies in order to support the agency in this task. The plan of operations called for cutting off military aid to Guatemala, increasing aid to its neighbors, exerting diplomatic and economic pressure against Arbenz, and attempts to subvert and/or defect army and political leaders, broad-scale psychological warfare, and paramilitary actions. During the period August through December 1953, a CIA staff was assembled and operational plans were prepared. Following are the specific operational mechanisms utilized by the agency in the overall missions against the Arbenz government. A. Paramilitary operations. Approximately 85 members of the Castillo Armas group received training in Nicaragua. 30 were trained in sabotage, 6 as shock troops, leaders, and 20 others as support-type personnel. 89 tons of equipment were prepared. The support of this operation was staged inside the border of Honduras and Nicaragua. Redacted. There were an estimated 260 men in Honduras and El Salvador for use as shock troops and specialists outside of the training personnel that had been sent to Nicaragua. Redacted. B. Air operations. The planning for providing air operation support was broken down in 3 phases, i.e. the initial stockpiling of equipment, the delivering of equipment to advanced bases by Black Flight, and the aerial resupply of troops in the field. 30 days prior to D-Day, a 4th phase, fighter support, was initiated. There were approximately 80 missions flown during the 14th to 29th of June 1954 period by various types of aircraft such as C-47s, F-47s, and Cessnas were used to discharge cargo, distribute propaganda, and strafing and bombing missions. So that's probably the most, like, you know, there's like a couple of these that are kind of like, you know, this sounds kind of like soft support. Oh, and then we're strafing and bombing people.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like we weren't that involved.
Yeah. And then also, we're only dealing with like a couple hundred people, like 200 people in Honduras, a couple hundred in El Salvador. It's like, that's less than there was people, like quiche people that came out to support. Oh man, has my mic been down?
What do you mean?
Do I sound better now?
I didn't notice if it was down. I mean, like, when you're down, I turn you up, so.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So yeah, it just goes to show like how actual minimal the support was in terms of like the exiles that were willing to wage this campaign, and how important it was for the psychological warfare aspect. The psychological aspect of the CIA involvement is everything in Operation PV success.
Right.
And we'll learn more about how ineffectual a ground invasion would have been. It's kind of like in Korea, where Syngman Rhee and his like piss poor little band of fascists would have gotten their teeth kicked in by the Korean people if it were not for immense American support.
Right. On the economic front, contingency plans were made for such things as cutting off Guatemalan credit abroad, disrupting its oil supplies, and causing a run on its foreign reserves. Oh, wow. Why did that sound so familiar, like something very but it was on the propaganda front that American ingenuity shone at its brightest. In as much as the Guatemalan government was being overthrown because it was communist, the fact of its communism would have to be impressed upon the rest of... Yeah, what? Have to be impressed upon the rest of Latin America. Oh, that sentence was weird. Accordingly, the U.S. Information Agency, USIA, began to place unattributed articles in foreign newspapers labeling particular Guatemalan officials as communist and referring to various actions by the Guatemalan government as communist-inspired. In the few weeks prior to Arbenz's fall alone, more than 200 articles about Guatemala were written and placed in scores of Latin American newspapers.
So this is the propaganda disinformation campaign that was utilized. I have a really funny cartoon in here. Is it next? Can you go forward one?
No, it's just more CIA stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do learn a little bit more about the CIA. There is a funny cartoon coming for anyone that's interested. If you can do that, give me that same little treatment here. Siegfried, the CIA agent in touch with Castillo Armas, forwarded to headquarters a disposal list compiled by Castillo Armas. When they're talking about disposal list, they're not talking about like general waste from the military operations that maybe need to be like environmentally tended to. No, they're talking about human beings that need to be disposed of. The list called for the execution through executive action of 58 Guatemalans and the imprisonment and exile of 74 additional Guatemalans. Siegfried, which is the CIA like code name person, also reported at the same time, 18 September 1952. That General Rafael Trujillo, the dictator of the Dominican Republic, had agreed to aid Castillo Armas in return for the killing of 4 Santo Dominicans at present residing in Guatemala a few days prior to D-Day. According to Siegfried, Castillo Armas readily agreed but cautioned that it could not be done prior to D-Day because of security reasons. Castillo Armas further added that his own plans included similar action and that special squads were already being trained. There was no record that headquarters took any action regarding Castillo Armas' list. Wrong. Go down. After the PB Fortune operation was officially terminated, the agency continued to pick up reports of assassination planning on the part of the Guatemalan opposition. In late November 1952, for example, an opposition Guatemalan leader in conversation with Siegfried confirmed that Castillo Armas had special K groups whose mission was to kill leading political and military leaders, and that the hit list with the location of the homes and offices of all targets had already been drawn up. On 12 December, Siegfried reported further that Castillo Armas planned the maximum use of the K groups. Another source subsequently reported that Nicaraguan, Honduran, and Salvadoran soldiers in civilian clothes would infiltrate Guatemala and assassinate unnamed communist leaders. In addition to monitoring events in Guatemala, the agency continued to try to influence developments and to float ideas for disposing of key figures in the redacted government. Redacted in 1953 proposed not only to focus on sabotage, defection, penetration, and propaganda efforts with regard to Guatemala, but to eliminate redacted. According to Redacted's draft memorandum, after creating a story that Redacted was preparing to house the communist, he could be eliminated. His assassination would be laid to the commies and used to bring about mass defection of the Guatemalan army. A Western Hemisphere division memo of 28 August 1953 also suggested possibly assassinating key Guatemalan military officers if they refused to be converted to the rebel cause. In September 1953, Redacted also sent Redacted an updated plan of action, which included a reference to neutralizing key Guatemalan military figures. In the psychological warfare area, Guatemala City Station sent redacted, all leading communists in Guatemala death notice cards for 30 straight days beginning April 15th, 1953. The station repeated the operation beginning in June 1953, but also reported no reaction from the targeted leaders. So this just goes deeper into like the death campaign that the CIA was embarking on in Guatemala for targeted hits of probably like non-criminal people, like people that were not necessarily engaging in any kind of like human rights abuses or anything, just general communist organizers like that are, just having their death planned.
You're just like a librarian. You open up your mail and it's just like, a fucking red hand. And it's like, the fuck does that even... Why am I getting like a skull picture mailed to me? What?
Yeah, and also, did you see the one part where they're like, this guy is going to work for us, and then we're going to kill him and blame it on the communists.
Right. Exactly.
So there's more defection.
I don't even know why the fuck you need to redact any of this, because it's just like, it's been close to a century, and...
It's funny that, like, all these CIA documents have certain parts that are like,
right.
No,
that we still can't have that out there.
Which is pretty funny. All right.
There we go.
All right, you want to take this?
Sure. Employing a method which was to become a standard CIA USIA feature all over Latin America and elsewhere, as we shall see, articles placed in one country were picked up by newspapers in other countries, either as a result of CIA payment or unwittingly because the story is of interest. Besides the obvious advantage of multiplying the potential audience, the tactic gave the appearance that the independent world opinion was taking a certain stand and further obscured the American connection. The USIA also distributed more than 100,000 copies of a pamphlet entitled Chronology of Communism in Guatemala throughout the hemisphere, as well as 27,000 copies of anti-communist cartoons and posters. The American propaganda agency moreover produced 3 films on Guatemala with predictable content and newsreels favorable to the United States for showing free in cinemas. And who doesn't love a free cinema?
Yeah. So just more about these like, oh man, I really messed up by not putting this in here. Just yet. There's a really funny cartoon. They mentioned cartoons. Just
send me the cartoon. Send me the cartoon.
No. It's coming up. It's
all right. Okay.
In May, the CIA covertly sponsored a Congress against Soviet intervention in Latin America in Mexico City. The same month, Somoza called in the diplomatic corps in Nicaragua and told them, his voice shaking with anger, that his police had discovered a secret Soviet shipment of arms, which had been planted by the CIA near the Pacific coast, and suggested that the communists wanted to convert Nicaragua into a new Korean situation. A few weeks later, an unmarked plane parachuted arms with Soviet markings onto Guatemala's coast. On such fare did the people of Latin America dine for decades. By such tactics were they educated about communism. So just poisoning the well about communism through CIA pamphlets, cartoons, articles, newspapers, and soon we'll learn about an entire fabricated radio station.
I just want to know, like, what kind of effort they went into making the arms look like they were from the Soviet Union. Like, did they just, like, carve hammer and sickles into the stocks? Like, I don't know.
Like, they don't even match, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's just like, I don't know, Cyrillic. I don't know, just make a weird-looking N. It just looks like an uncompleted box.
Yeah, most of these people can't read. It doesn't matter.
No one's going to know. In late January 1954, the operation appeared to have suffered a serious setback when photostat copies, whatever the fuck that is, of liberation documents found their way to Arbenz's hands. A few days later, Guatemala's newspapers published copies of correspondence signed by Castillo Anas, Somoza, and others under banner headlines. The documents revealed the existence of some of the staging, training, and invasion plans involving, amongst others, the government of the North. The State Department labeled the accusations of U.S. role ridiculous and untrue, and said it would not comment further because it did not wish to give them a dignity they did not deserve. Said a department spokesperson, quote, "It is the policy of the United States not to interfere in the internal affairs of other nations. This policy has repeatedly been reaffirmed under the present administration." Tell me an administration...
How do you feel about that last sentence?
Tell me an administration that has been like, yeah, no, we were totally involved in, like, you know, all of that. And then it's just like, oh, okay. But then we literally have, like, books upon books. We have documented evidence. We have, like, people reporting. We have, like, first-hand accounts. Like, no, I met with that guy. His name was Frank from the CIA. Or, like, you know, that's Bill. Yeah. Bill the Fed. Like, we have mountains of evidence that they have, like, you know, operated in other countries for decades, doing all kinds of, like, ghoulish, monstrous shit, and every fucking time, right? No matter what year it is, it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're not interfering in anybody's internal affairs. No.
Yeah, I just love that. Like, it's one thing that, like, to deny being involved in Guatemala when asked about it, but just taking, like, this sweeping denial of, like, it is the policy of the United States to not interfere in internal affairs of other nations. You guys know this. Everyone knows this.
Right, but it's
this
like...
policy has been repeatedly reaffirmed under the present administration. Have you not heard us reaffirming it? We have reaffirmed this emphatically.
In every case. In every case. And it's like...
denied it.
Every fucking time. And then it inevitably comes out that, like, well... whoopsies, you know, we had a little part to play.
World, you know what I mean?
We had a little whoopsie daisy, you know, we were a little, just a scotch involved, you know, a little bit of...
Thanks for stopping by, I appreciate it.
You know, who's to say, you know, who did or didn't kick a couple pallets of money out of a plane?
Who bombed and strafed and had assassin... There it is. The cartoon that I've been waiting for. I placed it a little wrong. It should have been right after they mentioned cartoons. But this is from the New York Times in 1953. I thought everybody in chat would get a little kick out of that.
I know you don't want a Stalin emote, but come on.
I'd probably be fine with that one. To be honest. The one that says, just call me Jose. Oh, Ross Publico, five gifted subs. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna fucking. I need to get a snipping tool.
Hold on, you guys, calm down. We're snipping. Yeah, I'd be fine with this one, to be honest.
All right, I'm gonna try. This
is called the Moscow Samba, and this was posted in response to our Benz in Guatemala, which I don't know if you know how racist it is to have this Guatemala, this person that is symbolizing Guatemala. It says Guatemala on the hat with the sombrero, the Mexican sombrero, and pretty much not only is this a racist depiction of a Mexican person, not that it would be not racist if it said Mexico on it, but the fact that it says Guatemala just like brings it to a different stratosphere of ignorance. Yes, it is supposed to be Stalin. HTAPG, you don't see it says just call me Jose? Who do you think that would racism aside, I need a mariachi Soviet national anthem.
I mean,
post days.
I'm definitely gonna edit it down. Like I want to edit, this part out.
New emote coming, everybody.
But like, yeah, this is I think it'd be like probably one of the better, Joseph Stalin emotes on Lefty Twitch.
I don't know if you see that too, but he has like a hammer and sickle.
Yeah.
What would that instrument be called?
I don't know, like a
guitar,
mandolin.
Yeah, like a ukulele. I don't know exactly what it is. But yeah, that's a good one. I'm glad we were able to find that because it's like, that you don't come across this stuff unless you're really digging through history. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
this kind of stuff like you really got to dig deep to find the little stuff like this.
Yeah,
that's what I'm here for.
This is a deep cut, because like where else are you gonna get that?
Just call me Jose.
Just call me Jose. Fuck. Yeah, that's so. This is gonna be so good. I'll edit it later.
Actually, Senor Steel. Yeah, that rules. I can't say that doesn't rule.
Fuck. Thank you for showing me this, Pat. This was amazing. Also, I love the fact that like even in the depiction, right? It's just like the Guatemalan person is just like, I don't know.
Yeah. He's just whistling and dancing. All right. The offensive began in earnest on 18th of June with planes dropping leaflets over Guatemala demanding that our Benz resign immediately or else various sites would be bombed, which they were. CIA radio stations broadcast similar messages. That afternoon, the planes returned to machine gun houses near military barracks, dropped frag bombs, and strafed the National Palace. Over the following week, the air attacks continued daily, strafing or bombing ports, fuel tanks, ammunition dumps, military barracks, and the international airport, a school, and several cities. 9 persons, including a 3-year-old girl, were reported wounded. An unknown number of houses were set afire by incendiary explosives. During one nighttime raid, a tape recording of a bomb attack was played over loudspeakers set up on the roof of the U.S. Embassy to heighten the anxiety of the capital's residents. When our Benz went on the air to try to calm the public's fears, the CIA radio team jammed the broadcast. So,
imagine like watching these like Americans like set up a fucking like loudspeaker on top of the embassy and be like, what the fuck are they doing? And then like the next thing you know, they're playing like, what I guess is supposed to be like a bombing raid, and they're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why?
And we already gathered that straight from the CIA documents that these bombing and strafing campaigns absolutely happened. They were absolutely carried out by the United States military, or should I say, at least the United States planes and pilots who were just, imagine being like joining the Air Force and they're like, all right, you're going to Guatemala. And it's like, I didn't realize we were going to war with Guatemala. And he's like,
they have an Air Force?
They shoot houses and schools. It's like, all right. And it's like, why? Communists. They're all communists down there.
It's a communist
school.
school.
Not communists. We need to scare the communists. Like, this was all meant to sow fear into the military and the people, so that you have to understand what's happening. There's only a ragtag group of like a couple hundred dudes over in Nicaragua or Honduras that are ready to come into the ground force of this popular revolt against Arbenz. But the thing is that you drop pamphlets, you make a radio station saying that there's an impending rebel army coming. And like, you read that in a newspaper and like, you're like, oh, you don't have the internet or anything. You're like,
like,
damn, is there a rebel
Red
army?
Dawn's coming any day.
And the next thing you know, you're getting bombed.
Yeah.
And then there's a radio station saying the wolves are at the gates. They're coming in and they're going to overthrow Arbenz. You better turn your back on him right now or else you'll be getting fucked up too. So like, it's all smoke and mirrors, just making the population of Guatemala and the Guatemalan military be like, holy shit, we're about to get fucked here. If we don't, we got to change.
Yep.
I
fucking hate it.
Mm-hmm. Here's, this is out of Bitter Fruit, which is another very, very important book on Guatemalan history about the coup. Well, probably like the single most famous book on the Guatemalan coup. I think I might have a PDF for it. I'll put in chat if somebody can put it in our PDF library. Bitter Fruit, yes I do. It's on the archive.org. You just got to sign up for it and you can like pretty much rent the books out of it. It's really easy and free. I use this all the time. So yeah, if anybody wants to put that in our PDF library, that's where I took these snips from. American pilots paid by the CIA flew air raids for the rebel forces. One struck a gasoline storage depot and another bombed Fort Matamoros, a key military installation in the capital. So go forward. There's another picture of another bombing area.
Oh, Jesus. Fuck.
Yeah, that's the other area that got bombed. So these are the bombing areas that we read about in not only the book, but also in CIA documents, that American pilots dropped these bombs in populated places of Guatemala for the purpose of like psychological warfare, really. That's all it was really for.
Right. Meanwhile, the agency's army had crossed into Guatemala from Honduras and captured a few towns, but its progress in the face of resistance by the Guatemalan army was unspectacular. On the broadcast of the CIA's Voice of Liberation, the picture was different. The rebels were everywhere and advancing. They were of large numbers and picking up volunteers as they marched. War and upheaval in all corners, fearsome battles, and major defeats for the Guatemalan army. Some of these broadcasts were transmitted over regular public and even military channels, serving to convince some of Arbenz's officers that the reports were genuine. In the same way, the CIA was able to answer real military messages with fake responses. All manner of disinformation was spread and rumors fomented. Dummy parachute drops were made in scattered areas to heighten the belief that a major invasion was taking place.
Right, so a couple things to keep in mind here. Voice of Liberation, this is a CIA clandestine radio station, which wasn't even in Guatemala. This is not even located in the country of Guatemala, but it's being broadcasted throughout Guatemala as if it's a sincere voice of a rebel movement, notifying the population of Guatemala that there is a large force of people coming through that is gaining popular support. They're winning battles. They're unstoppable. To poison the minds of the Guatemalan people and instill fear in them about the situation that they were once supportive of. Also, just keep in mind this situation here with the dummy bombs that were dropped in Honduras, because we're going to watch a small video on that. Dummy bombs dropped in Honduras. Go ahead.
It reminds me of, what the fuck is that? They, like, made a movie, you know, or, like, a remake of it or something with, like, Tom Cruise. What the fuck is it? The day the Earth stood still or something? Where, like, the Martians invade.
I don't know.
Oh, whatever.
I don't. So here's actually a picture that documents. These are the guys that they had to set up. It's like two guys from Miami, I think. Documents do confirm that Phillips was indeed tasked with running radio liberation. After the CIA had decided that it would be a bad idea to let Castillo Armas be in charge of it. Phillips' code name would be Langevin, and he'd be managing a team of Guatemalan exiles who the CIA had hired as a radio crew. The two head DJs were named Mario Lopez Villataro and Jose Pepe Toran Barrios. Another unnamed Guatemalan man would help them operate the station. It says down here, after a few drunken evenings at Miami nightclubs with his new team, according to Phillips, the actor arrived in headquarters in Opelika to start his new job. At headquarters, he saw just how sprawling the operation was. A diagram of all the players took up the entire wall of the office. It says Mario Lopez Villantaro, and Jose Pepe Barrios, the two head DJs for Radio Liberation. So pretty much it was two actors from Miami that were the DJs or the main voice of liberation, Radio Liberation.
Miami. What a horrible fucking place.
Fucking Miami. Here's also the head of a document, clandestine Radio Liberation. And then also this fire on rioters down there too, armed communist workmen. So this is from a CIA document that just is exposing Radio Liberation as a CIA ploy. So now if you go forward, this video here is about, it's like a propaganda video for the voice of liberation, and also it talks about that Honduran bombing situation a little bit.
Jesus Christ. That's the diagram.
Atención Guatemala, atención guatemaltecos, Radio Liberación en 6.360 kilociclos onda corta les habla. Esta es la emisora clandestina del Movimiento Libertador Guatemalteco, operando en su frecuencia de 6.360 kilociclos onda corta y desde algún lugar secreto de la República. Escúchenos ustedes y sabrá la realidad del momento político porque atraviesa Guatemala y los progresos irrefutables del gran movimiento libertador. Durante el transcurso de nuestras transmisiones diarias, damos a ustedes música, comentarios y noticias en general, y demostramos palpablemente el crimen de la dominación comunista y la fuerza incontenible de nuestra gran cruzada de liberación. En el aire, los transmisores clandestinos de Radio Liberación de Guatemala en 6.360 kilociclos onda corta.
Okay, never mind. There's a different video about the bombs, but that was just an example of like the false campaigns of Radio Liberation that were pretty much saying like, oh, the strength of the liberation movement, it's unstoppable, and the communist domination is so evil. Like, join us and we will continue this campaign. The primary purpose of the bombing and the many forms of disinformation was to make it appear that military defenses were crumbling, that resistance was futile, thus provoking confusion and division in the Guatemalan armed forces and causing some elements to turn against Arbenz. The psychological warfare conducted over the radio was directed by E. Howard Hunt, later of Watergate fame, and David Atlee Phillips, a newcomer to the CIA. When Phillips was first approached about the assignment, he asked his superior, Tracy Barnes, in all innocence, but Arbenz became president in a free election. What right do we have to help someone topple his government and throw him out of office? For a moment, wrote Phillips later, I detected in his face a flicker of concern, a doubt, the reactions of a sensitive man. But Barnes quickly recovered and repeated the party line about the Soviets establishing an easily expandable beachhead in Central America. Phillips never looked back. When he retired from the CIA in the mid-70s, he founded the Association of Retired Intelligence Officers, an organization formed to counteract the flood of unfavorable publicity sweeping over the agency at the time. So just one of those like, oh, hey, I have a conscience.
Yeah. I think also, wasn't it like right before or during like Kennedy's presidency, like it turned out that like the CIA had been like monitoring like American citizens' mail or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that at all.
But
I don't know the specifics of it,
a news story broke, and the CIA became suddenly incredibly unpopular with the American public, and that was actually more of a reason why JFK was like, I think it might be time that we get rid of the CIA.
Yeah, and they're like, uh-oh.
And then they killed him.
And he's dead.
On 21 and 22 June, Guatemalan Foreign Minister Torriello made an impassioned appeals to the United Nations for help in resolving the crisis. American UN Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge, no, not three first names, tried to block the Security Council from discussing a resolution to send an investigating team to Guatemala, characterizing Torriello's appeals as communist maneuvers. But under heavy pressure from UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld, the council was convened. Before the vote, while Lodge worked on the smaller nations represented on the council, Eisenhower and Dulles came down hard on France and Great Britain, both of whom favored the resolution. Said the President of the United States to his Secretary of State, "The British expect us to give them a free ride and side with them on Cyprus, and yet they won't even support us on Guatemala. Let's give them a lesson." As matters turned out, the resolution was defeated by 5 votes to 4, with Britain and France abstaining, although their abstentions were not crucial inasmuch as 7 votes were required for passage. Hammarskjöld was so upset with the American machinations, which he believed undercut the strength of the United Nations, that he confided that he might be forced to reconsider my present position in the United Nations.
Yeah, so even now, like, there's even other individuals in the United Nations being like, hey, I'm not so sure that this is a good thing that you're doing down there in Guatemala. All right, let's move forward here.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that didn't go off again. All right.
During the same period, the CIA put into practice a plan to create an incident. Agency planes were dispatched to drop several harmless bombs on Honduran territory. This is that thing that I was talking about. The Honduran government then complained to the UN and the Organization of the American States, claiming that the country had been attacked by Guatemalan planes. Which is just funny to think that there's like in this whole thing, like there's so much innocence around the Guatemalan Revolution that they're like, start bombing Honduras for some reason. Arbenz finally received an ultimatum from certain army officers: resign or they would come to an agreement with the invaders. The CIA and Ambassador Purifoy had been offering payments to officers to defect, and one army commander reportedly accepted $60,000 to surrender his troops. With his back to the wall, Arbenz made an attempt to arm civilian supporters to fight for the government, but array officers blocked the disbursement of weapons. The Guatemalan president knew that the end was near. So this was all those weapons that he purchased from Czechoslovakia. This is what he was trying to do with them. He was trying to distribute them to his loyal supporters, and unfortunately that was prevented.
Didn't happen.
The military, it says down here, this is another picture from Bitter Fruit. The military government of Honduras, which strongly supported the U.S.-backed rebels, complained at the height of the battle that it had been bombed by Guatemalan planes. But photographers who visited the site of the attack, the small Honduras town of San Pedro, found only this unexploded bomb and no damage. More information on that. Go ahead, you can play this, yeah.
Subtitles, let's see if they need them. Yes, more JPEG.
U.S. and Russia keep hands off.
Confronted by the greatest crisis since the communist invasion that caused the Korean War, the United Nations Security Council, with Henry Cabot Lodge as president, sits in extraordinary session. A Sunday convocation that hears Guatemala's chief delegate allege that his country is the victim of international aggression. Though the facts show that the rebellion now disturbing Central America is one conducted by patriotic anti-red Guatemalans, which inspires Russia to air the worn-out charge that the U.S. created the trouble. Although the Guatemalan, to Mr. Lodge's satisfaction, absolved the U.S.
I'm very glad that the Guatemalan representative made it crystal clear that he makes no charge whatever against the United States government.
The Kremlinite then hears this warning.
Representative of the Soviet Union, stay out of this hemisphere and don't try to start your plans and your conspiracies over here. Translation.
Translation. Suck on that. Yeah, Kame Red.
Guatemala-Honduras border, the town of Nueva Octopeque, headquarters of the Guatemala insurgents, is invaded by a plane load of American newsmen, including Al Waldron, movie-tone veteran war photographer. Here to bring the world reliable newsreel reports from this latest global hotspot, his camera catches a press interview with secondary anti-communist liberation leaders, Captain Mendieta and Colonel Lopez, who, with maps, explain how they hope to capture the capital city. Massing for an advance against the communist-dominated forces of President Jacobo Arbenz Guzman, the liberation patriots are well equipped with small arms.
It's like 5 of them.
They quickly overrun a number of border towns which surrender without a shot being fired. But it's all very confusing. For while rebel headquarters bustles and its top leaders, Colonel Carlos Castillo Armas on right, here with his first aide Colonel Mendoza, plan their campaign, the United Nations is racked with conflicting opinions about what to do to avoid further bloodshed. As events in Guatemala disclose an anti-communist army junta replacing the red-dominated government of President Jacobo Arbenz Guzman, students in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, stage a demonstration protesting the use of their country as a base by the Guatemalan rebels. And it becomes inflamed by the news that communists bombed a Honduran airstrip at San Pedro de Copan, a scene to which the chief of the Honduras Air Force, Major Hector Carocchiola, brings your movie-tone cameraman in the press, where a native identifies the hole dug by the bomb, which was a dud. But the ousting of the communists hasn't stopped the original rebels, with reports now telling of the bombing and strafing by them of Guatemala City.
This is just a propane tank.
Guatemala City, representatives of the new anti-communist government inspect $10 million worth of arms that were sold to the deposed red government of President Arbenz. Manufactured in Czechoslovakia and delivered by Polish ships, the collection was supposed to help the commies to suppress the rebellion against their tyranny. But listen to this. It's all junk. The commies, knowing they didn't have a chance, unloaded a lot of defective arms on the Guatemala Reds. A new twist in red duplicity.
So, yeah, so that's just some of the news propaganda that was going on. As we already learned from the documents, these unexploded ordinances, these dud bombs they dropped in Honduras were just for like a media campaign to be like, look, they're bombing us, even though there was no actual destruction or even a single bomb that actually went off. Just a couple unexploded duds that were meant to, just for media coverage. I don't know if you heard that part. There was actually a bunch of protests in Honduras of people protesting them using it as a base for the Guatemalan rebels. Meanwhile, Guatemala City was actually being bombed and strafed by American planes, not rebel planes, American planes.
Right.
The Voice of Liberation, meanwhile... Oh, is this you? Go ahead.
I don't care. The Voice of Liberation, meanwhile, was proclaiming that 2 large and heavily armed columns of invaders were moving towards Guatemala City. As the hours passed, the further advance of the mythical forces was announced, while Castillo Armas and his small band had actually not progressed very far from the Honduran border. The American disinformation and rumor offensive continued in other ways as well, and Arbenz, with no one he could trust to give him accurate information, could no longer be certain that there wasn't at least some truth to the radio bulletins. Nothing would be allowed to threaten the victory so near at hand. A British freighter docked in Guatemala and suspected of having arrived with fuel for Arbenz's military vehicles was bombed and sunk by a CIA plane after the crew had been warned to flee. It turned out that the ship had come to Guatemala to pick up a cargo of coffee and cotton. Well, Brits, you're not getting your fucking coffee or your fucking socks. Get fucked.
Yeah, so that's a pretty, I don't know if to call it humorous or not, but like, you know, the CIA is so paranoid about the situation that like a British ship pulls up and they're like, sink it immediately.
What's all this then? Why are you bombing our ship? Where'd you take to pick up all coffee and cotton? What's all this then?
Yeah, exactly. Here's actually an interesting so we're hearing this like massive campaign about the resounding successes of the Castillo Armas rebel army. And here we have, so look here on the on the legend here. You see that filled in part that is the final extent of rebel-controlled territory?
Okay.
You see it right there in the middle?
Right here.
That's
Vado Hondo.
That's as far as the rebels got into this. If you look up, the largest rebel force was defeated in June of 21, June 21st. If you look over here, rebel forces were defeated in June 20th. And then if you look, and then if you look down here, down, the forces were jailed by Salvadorian authorities before they even got into Guatemala. So there was one group of them that actually got into Guatemala here and did capture the city, and an armed garrison did surrender here without a fight on the 23rd. But this is the extent of the success of the rebel army. They were defeated in two out of three of their campaigns, one of which at a fourth that never even made it into Guatemala, and the largest rebel force was defeated on the 21st.
Also,
so this was
the footage showed them. It looked like just a small indigenous town that they just like. We don't want to get shot.
Guns. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So this is from the University of Indiana. I don't know where they actually got all this, but they released this map, and the map is used in this book, Secret History, the CIA's classified account of its operations in Guatemala. I don't actually have a good PDF of this, but
I didn't even see you grab that. You just kind of whipped that out of nowhere.
Yep. Well, I have my sources with me.
Jesus fucking Christ.
You know, I was going through a quick little refresher on a couple things before I set this out.
God damn.
So this is actually just shows, like, really illustrates the futility of the actual rebel invasion, and that if it wasn't for this immense psychological campaign and the use of American airplanes and radio and newspaper and pamphlets and utilizing religious leaders and everything like that we didn't even really get into as much, this would have never been successful.
Right. Is this me or you?
I think it's me. The Castillo Armas forces could not have defeated the much larger Guatemalan array, but the air attacks combined with the belief of the invincibility of the enemy persuaded Guatemalan military officers to force Arbenz to resign. No communists, domestic or foreign, came to his aid. He asked the head of the officers, Army Chief of Staff Colonel Carlos Diaz, only that he give his word not to negotiate with Castillo Armas. And Diaz, who despised the rebel commander as much as Arbenz did, readily agreed. What Diaz did not realize was that the United States would not be satisfied merely to oust Arbenz. Castillo Armas had been groomed as the new head of government, and that was not negotiable. So this guy Diaz, who was Army Chief of Staff, pretty much went to Arbenz and was like, listen, the jig's fucking up. We're fucked. You step down. I'll go talk to the Americans. I'll step in. And Arbenz was like, I'll step down, but do not negotiate with that motherfucker Castillo Armas. Like, fuck that dude. Like, I'll leave.
Fuck him specifically.
Fuck that guy. Like, do not negotiate with that guy. So Diaz is like, cool. You know what I mean? Like, I'll run shit. You leave.
Right.
I'll hold it down. Let me go talk to the Americans. Maybe if we get you out of the way, we can kind of like salvage this situation. And he's like, all right, just no Armas.
Right.
No Castillo Armas. And he's like, I got you. No Castillo Armas.
And I think that, like, the other thing about, like, you know, no communist, domestic or foreign came to his aid is, like, you know, I don't even think, like, the Soviets, well, no, like, we know that the Soviets are aware, but the Soviets are like, well, we can't get involved now. They've accused us of being involved, and we haven't been. So
not only that, if you look at all of the Soviet track record of this time of not getting involved, in shit like
it's just
that,
like to a
it's not
fault.
surprising whatsoever that they did not get involved.
Right, it's like to a fault, where it's just like, well, maybe we should have at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
But like the other thing is, especially for the domestic communists, it's just like you got to remember that, like, what, less than 10 years before this, it was like I could be jailed and tortured and murdered, and my entire family would be killed.
Passing around assassination lists with names and home addresses of communists. It's
Right.
not like that stopped. Like that's still like actively in play right
I feel like there's not that many, and word probably got around pretty quickly that, like, hey, did you also get a death threat in the mail?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna pee real quick.
All
What's the next one? Lindsay? Okay, yeah, go ahead and read this and then read the part at the bottom.
You got it. A CIA official, Enno Hopping, who had just arrived in Guatemala to help draft a new constitution, for the incoming regime, told Diaz that he had made a big mistake in taking over the government. Colonel, he said, hobbing, you're just not convenient for the requirements of American foreign policy. Presently, Purifoy confronted Diaz with the demand that he deal directly with Castillo Armas. At the same time, the ambassador showed the Guatemalan colonel a long list of names of some leaders, requiring that Diaz shoot them all within 24 hours. But why? Diaz asked. Because they're communists, replied Purifoy. And then he wants me to read the thing at the bottom. Operation PBS Success. Oh, you know what? That's what's missing here. CIA History Staff documented by Nicholas Cole, author, 1994. Let's see here. A narrative history of the CIA's role in planning, organizing, executing the coup that toppled Jacobo Arbenz Guzman on June 27th, 1954. Cole father. This is the thing you wanted me to read, right? Document 5. Go up.
All of them.
Oh, okay, all of them. Okay.
Oh wait.
You said go to the bottom. That's why I was like.
Go up.
Back to this.
Oh, did I mess this up? Hold on.
What are you talking about?
Give me 1 second.
You're good.
You open that up again? Go all the way to the top.
You got it?
Here, no, read this. I think I put the wrong thing there.
You're good.
You read the part where Purifoy was like, yeah, okay, cool, you can have power, kill all these communists.
Yeah, he's like, why would I do that? He's like, because they're communists.
What more do I have to explain to you?
Making sure I didn't accidentally almost like dox myself. Alright. Read this one. Right? Wait, this is the same thing, isn't it? Is it just because I'm zoomed in a lot?
Yeah, no, it isn't. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, which part? Start from the
Just
beginning?
go down to the documents. Read the document summaries.
All right.
Document 1 and document 2.
CIA and Guatemala assassination proposals, 1952 to 54. CIA history staff analysis by Gerald K. Haynes in June 1995. Do you want me to read this part too?
Yeah.
CIA records on. Let me just zoom it in.
Yeah, there you
go. That's like about big enough. All right. CIA records on assassination planning in Guatemala were first gathered pursuant to a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit filed in 1979. All of them were withheld on national security grounds at the time. In 1995, the CIA's historical staff rediscovered these records during a search of Guatemala materials to be declassified as part of the agency's openness program. A staff historian, Gerald Haynes, was assigned to write this brief history of these operations. He concluded that as early as January 1952, CIA headquarters began compiling lists of individuals in Arbenz's government to eliminate immediately in event of a successful anti-communist coup. Planning for assassination included budgeting, training programs, creation of hit teams, drafting of target lists of persons, and transfer of armaments. Haynes writes that until the day that Arbenz resigned in June 1954, the option of assassination was still being considered. The CIA, according to this history, did not implement its assassination strategy, but the declassifiers of this study and other related documents have deleted the names of the targeted individuals, making it impossible to verify that none of them were killed during or in the aftermath of the coup.
They were. Go down.
They were.
Document 2, a study of assassination. Among the documents found in the training files of Operation PB Success, which is the coup that we're reading now, and declassified by the agency as a study of assassination, a how-to guidebook in the art of political killing. The 19-page manual offers detailed descriptions of the procedures, instruments, and implementation of assassination. The simplest local tools are often the most efficient means of assassination, counsels the study. A hammer, axe, wrench, screwdriver, fire poker, kitchen knife, lampstand, or anything else heavy and handy will suffice. For an assassin using edge weapons, the manual notes in cold clinical terms, puncture wounds of the body cavity may not be reliable unless the heart is reached. Absolute reliability is retained by severing the spinal cord in the cervical region. The manual also notes that to provide plausible denial, no assassination instruction should ever be written or recorded. Murder, the drafter's state, is not morally justifiable, and persons who are morally squeamish should not attempt.
What the fuck?
So this is this thing called the study of assassination that was actually, during this PB success, was given out to people to be like, hey, this is how you kill people. Go down.
But make sure you aim for the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Selection of individuals for disposal by Junta Group, March 31st, 1954. One of the many assassination lists compiled by the CIA during planning for Operation Success. As the memorandum indicates, the chief of one of the CIA's divisions involved in the coup, the division title has been deleted, requested a list of names of Arbenz's government leaders, members of the Communist Party, and individuals of tactical importance whose removal for psychological, organizational, or other reasons is mandatory for the success of military action. The memo asks that CIA personnel read through the list and initial the names of those who should be included on a final list of disposees? What the fuck? The list and the initials or names of all CIA officers appearing in the document has been withheld. A handwritten note attached on the bottom of the memo reads, Elimination List, April. Illegible? I'm assuming that means illegible. Sure. Is taking a copy of list of names for checking with illegible. April 7th, original memo with attached biographic data has been passed to deleted, returned by deleted on. It's like, why even bother? Like, at that point.
And this last one, it's not the last one. Guatemalan communist personnel to be disposed of during military operation of Caligaris, origin deleted, undated. Another version of the assassination list compiled by the CIA and Castillo Armas, codenamed Caligaris. In the course of preparing for the 1954 coup, the names of the agency intended victims were divided into two categories: persons to be disposed of through executive action, i.e. killed, and those to be imprisoned or exiled during the operation. Before releasing this document to the public, the CIA deleted every name, leaving only rows of numbers to indicate how many people were being targeted.
Wild. Operation PB, I keep on wanting to say PBS Success, but I know it's PB Success.
I know, that happened to me forever.
The United States and Guatemala, 1952-54, CIA History Staff Document by Nicholas Colauthor, 1994, excerpt. A narrative history of the CIA's role in planning, organizing, and executing the coup that toppled Jacobo Arbenz Guzman on June 27, 1954. Co-author, now a diplomatic historian at the University of Indiana, worked on contract for 1 year with the CIA, where he was given access to thousands of agency records and secret operational files in order to produce this overview. The result is a surprisingly critical study of the agency's first covert operation in Latin America, beginning with a review of the political, economic, and social forces that led to Arbenz's presidency in 1951. The document is an intimate account of how Cold War concerns convinced President Eisenhower to order the removal of the democratically elected leader by force. It also provides countless new details of covert missions plagued by disastrous military planning and failed security measures. According to co-author, Operation Success barely succeeded. The CIA scrambled to convince the White House that it was unqualified and all but bloodless victory. However, after Arbenz resigned, Eisenhower called the Director of Central Intelligence, Alan W. Dulles, and his senior covert planners into a formal briefing of the operation. Co-author's account now reveals that the agency lied to the president, telling him that only one of the rebels it had backed was killed. Incredible, said the president. And it was. At least 4 dozen were dead, according to the CIA's own records. Thus did the Guatemala coup enter agency lore as an unblemished triumph, co-author explains, and become the model for the future CIA activities in Latin America. In Guatemala, of course, Operation Success had a deadly aftermath. After a small insurgency developed in the wake of the coup, Guatemala's military leaders developed and refined, with U.S. assistance, a massive counterinsurgency campaign that left tens of thousands massacred, maimed, or missing.
So just a little right from the horse's mouth situation there of CIA documents about assassination regarding to this event. I figured that was important to include.
Yeah, no, I think that was oh shit, I did it again. I think that just goes back to, like, you know, again, what we were talking about like a couple slides ago, where it was like, deny, we have no involvement, and then it's just like, no, we absolutely had like all the involvement.
We weren't even just involved; we were the ones. Okay, so although Diaz was not a communist sympathizer, he refused both requests and indicated. Oh, later, Lenin. He refused both requests and indicated that the struggle against the invaders would continue. Purifoy left, livid with anger. He then sent a simple cable to CIA headquarters in Florida. We have been double-crossed. Bomb. Within hours, a CIA plane took off from Honduras, bombed the military base, and destroyed the government radio station. Colonel Castillo Armas, whose anti-communism the United States could trust, was soon the new leader of Guatemala. So, now Diaz has been told to fuck off, and Castillo Armas is finally the leader of Guatemala. And obviously, this will be for the good of Guatemala, correct? Like, after all this.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you gotta
sure.
break
Yeah.
some egg. You gotta break some eggs if you want to make a delicious democracy omelet, right?
Right. You gotta, you know, murder a few people, torture a few people, bomb a couple small villages.
But the utility of that is overall, you know, greater well-being and standard of living. That's probably, we could probably say it's worth it, right?
Who gives a shit about that? The bananas, Patrick. The coffee.
Let's go forward and see.
Who gives a shit what happens to the Guatemalans? What about my coffee?
There he is, everybody. The man himself.
The future of Guatemala lies at the disposal of the Guatemalan people themselves. It lies also at the disposal of leaders loyal to Guatemala who have not treasonably become the agents of an alien despotism which sought to use Guatemala for its own evil ends. The events of recent months and days add a new and glorious chapter to the already great tradition of the American states.
Is that it? That's it, right?
I don't think he's like media savvy enough to do the whole thing at once, so they break it into like segments.
We can all be grateful that we showed at Caracas an impressive solidarity and support of our American institutions. I may add that we are prepared to do so again at the conference called
I gotta do my teeth in real quick.
Advanced knowledge of that solidarity
They came out.
undoubtedly shook the former Guatemalan government. We can be grateful that the Organization of American States showed that it could act quickly and vigorously in aid of peace. There was proof that our American organization is not just a paper organization, but that it has vigor and vitality to act.
Please, Polygrip, please give us please give us a sponsorship.
The need for vigilance is not past. Communism is still a menace everywhere. But the people of the United States and of the other American republics can feel that at least one grave danger has been averted. Also, an example has been set which promises increased security for the future. The ambitious and the unscrupulous will be less prone to feel that communism is their wave of the future.
We are their wave of the future.
Let me assure the people of Guatemala, as peace and freedom are restored to that sister republic, the government of the United States will continue to support the just aspirations of the Guatemalan people. A prosperous and progressive Guatemala is vital to a healthy hemisphere. The United States pledges itself to support not merely political opposition to communism, but to help to alleviate conditions in Guatemala and elsewhere which might afford communism an opportunity to spread its tentacles throughout the hemisphere.
Its tentacles.
Thus we shall seek in positive ways to make our Americas an example which will inspire men everywhere.
Am I done yet? Right. No? That line?
The need for vigilance is not past. Communism is still a menace everywhere. But the people of the United States and of the other American republics can feel that at least one grave danger has been averted. Also, an example has been set which promises increased security for the future. The ambitious and the unscrupulous will be less
Wrong
prone to
popo.
feel
Exactly. Yeah.
communism is a wave of their future. Let me assure the people of Guatemala, as peace and freedom are
I hear
restored
people
to
talking
that
about the
sister
United Fruit Company as an octopus, and
the
like, that's
government
good.
of the
Use,
United
use that.
States will
I'll use
continue
that.
to support the just aspirations of the Guatemalan people. A prosperous and progressive Guatemala is vital to a healthy hemisphere. The United States pledges itself not merely to political opposition to communism, but to help to alleviate conditions in Guatemala and elsewhere which might afford communism an opportunity to spread its tentacles throughout this hemisphere. Thus we shall seek in positive ways to make our Americas an example which will inspire men everywhere.
Everywhere. Tentacles. It's really big on the tentacles.
Yeah, there's a lot of tentacle mention here.
The future of Guatemala lies at the disposal of the Guatemalan.
Oh, I see what's going on here. This is just takes of the same thing over and over again.
Leaders loyal to Guatemala.
Did you realize that yet?
No, I mean, I think he must be rephrasing it, right?
Yeah. They're just like doing different takes.
The events of recent months and days adds a new and glorious chapter to the already great tradition of the American states.
It's already great. America is already great.
If world communism captured any American state, however small, a new and perilous front is established which will increase the danger to the entire free world and require even greater sacrifices from the American people.
What sacrifices are the American people
making besides tax dollars, right?
Yeah, like even in 1954, things were overall pretty good if you were white, and I'm certain that that's all he gave a shit about. So
riding off New Deal.
New Deal, suburbs are popping up everywhere, fucking GI Bill, fucking you name it, man. Credit scores aren't a thing yet.
Yeah. Oh, here's an interesting little picture here. Not all Latin Americans, however, were as pleased by the overthrow of Arbenz by a U.S.-backed coup. This is in Chile. I don't know. This is in Chile. I think it says down here. I think it says the people of Chile with Guatemala.
Yeah,
they're burning American flags in Chile over the coup.
Trying to see what flag that dude's holding on the bottom part of the picture, but I really can't make it out.
Yeah, who knows?
Let me just turn this back on. There we go. Chill vibes. Castillo Armas celebrated the liberation of Guatemala in various ways. In July alone, thousands were arrested on suspicion of communist activity. Many were tortured or killed. I guess that's one way to celebrate. In August, a law was passed and a committee was set up which could declare anyone a communist with no right of appeal. Those so declared could be arbitrarily arrested for up to 6 months, could not own a radio or hold public office. Within 4 months, the committee had registered 72,000 names. A committee official said it was aiming for 200,000. Further implementation of the agrarian reform law was stopped and all expropriations of land already carried out were declared invalid. United Fruit Company not only received all its land back, but the government banned the banana workers' unions as well. Moreover, 7 employees of the company who had been active labor organizers were found mysteriously murdered in Guatemala City.
So weird.
So coincidental.
So also, we're seeing kind of what the Castillo Armas regime is really about here. Go forward. We have some more information on that.
Also, didn't you keep saying that the population of Guatemala is pretty small? 200,000 people is that's quite a few
first
people.
of all, I said that specific cities have small populations in aside from Guatemala City.
Right.
So here's a little excerpt from Castillo Armas's old Wikipedia page. Let's see what this says about the guy that the United States just helped get into power and resolutely supported, even when other people were like, "Hey, man, I'll take power." They were like, "No, it has to be this guy. This is the guy." Prior to the 1954 coup, Castillo Armas had been reluctant to discuss how he would govern the country. He had never articulated any particular philosophy, which had worried his CIA contacts. No, it didn't. The closest he came to doing so was in the Plan de Tegucigalpa, a manifesto issued on 23 December 1953 that criticized the Sovietization of Guatemala. Castillo Armas had expressed sympathy for the justicialismo, a philosophy supported by Juan Perón, the president of Argentina.
Oh, God.
Upon taking power, Castillo Armas, worried that he lacked popular support, which he did, attempted to eliminate all opposition. He quickly arrested many thousands of opposition leaders, branding them communists. Detention camps were built to hold the prisoners when the jails exceeded their capacity. Historians have estimated that more than 3,000 people were arrested following the coup, and that approximately 1,000 agricultural workers were killed, which means indigenous people, were killed by Castillo Armas's troops on Finca Jocatan alone. So that's only on one plantation that over 1,000 workers were killed.
Christ.
Yeah. Near Tequasate, which had been a major center of labor organizing throughout the decade of the revolution. Acting on the advice of Dulles, Castillo Armas also detained a number of citizens trying to flee the country. He also created a National Committee of Defense Against Communism. With sweeping powers of arrest, detention, and deportation, over the next few years, the committee investigated nearly 70,000 people. Many were imprisoned, executed, or disappeared frequently without trial. In August 1954, the government passed Decree 59, which permitted the security forces to detain anybody on the blacklist of CDNCC for 6 months without trial. The eventual list of suspected communists compiled by the CDNCC included 1 in every 10 adults in the country. Attempts were also made to eliminate from government positions people who had gained them under Arbenz. All political parties, labor unions, and peasant organizations were outlawed. In histories of the period, Castillo Armas had been referred to as a dictator. So this guy got into power, murdered thousands of people, arrested thousands more, created a police state which put 1 in every 10 members of the country on a blacklist, which they were surveilled. Anyone on the blacklist could be detained for up to 6 months without any type of trial. And he banned all other political parties, labor unions, and peasant organizations. So this is the individual that was placed into power, not by popular election, but by the United States in their campaign to rescue Guatemala from the tyranny of Soviet-dominated rule of Jacobo Arbenz. Remember that guy in the video that we played in the beginning? Remember that 12-minute video?
Mm-hmm.
Needed to be replaced by this man.
That sucks. That's not great at all. And
I'm going to say it right now. That sucks.
That sucks. That's not cool. Baldwin's Ghost is saying that lynchings are still legal. It's a great old time.
They were referring back to when you were talking about 1950s America.
Oh, right. Yeah, my bad. And Red Wizard says...
That's the capital of Honduras. Okay, interesting. Thank you for that. I didn't even know that.
I wonder if he came up with this plan while in Honduras.
Well, he probably did, because that's where he was. And he probably used a lot of the CIA study of assassination guide to kill a bunch of these people, I would assume. All right, let's go forward.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's an effigy of Armas. I mean, not Armas, of Arbenz.
Yeah.
That the rebels had made.
You can tell by the forehead.
Yeah. Dude did not lack forehead.
He had a sizable one. You know, I'm not going to lie. I'm not hating. I'm just saying.
That's Castillo Armas there, and that's him with Richard Nixon after this, where he was lauded as a champion of American interest in democracy in Central America.
I mean, what is it with the what do you call what's their Cadillo? You know, like the strongman dudes and like their fucking little uniforms and shit.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like the only guy that made like uniforms.
You have a Nixon impression?
I am not a crook. It's a pleasure to meet you, Armas. Have you killed enough communists yet? Have you outlawed every possible thing? They can't own a radio. Unusual maybe, but...
There's actually a really funny video. Maybe we'll watch it at the end of Armas and Castillo Armas and Lincoln and Nixon talking. It's really silly, like, because they can't understand each other. And well, they can't understand each other, but Castillo Armas is speaking in very broken English, off of the paper, and Nixon's just sitting there like probably racist, and being dude, get me away from this person that can't speak English. But he says this thing, dude. Nixon says this thing. We'll watch it at the end because the more I think about it, the crazier it is. He's like, this is the first time that communism has been overthrown by the people.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very grand statement. We'll watch that at the end. Go ahead.
Red Wizard is saying that my Nixon impression is a tweaked out Nixon.
All right, is this me?
Yes.
Okay. Meanwhile, John Foster Dulles, who was accused by Torriello of seeking to establish a banana curtain in Central America, was concerned that some communists might escape retribution. In cables he exchanged with Ambassador Purifoy, Dulles insisted that the government arrest those Guatemalans who had taken refuge in foreign embassies, and that criminal charges be brought against them to prevent them from leaving the country. Charges such as having been covert Moscow agents. The Secretary of State argued that communists should be automatically denied the right of asylum because they were connected with an international conspiracy. The only way they should be allowed to leave, he asserted, is if they agreed to be sent to the Soviet Union. I'd be like, all right. All right. The Armas refused to accede to Dulles' wishes on this particular issue, influenced perhaps by the fact that he, as well as some of his colleagues, had been granted political asylum in the embassy at one time or another. So even he didn't go that far. Dulles was a little too extreme for this murderous list-making, dictator.
Apparently, it made him a little, a little much, don't you think?
Yeah.
One of those who sought asylum in the Argentine embassy was a 25-year-old Argentine doctor named Ernesto Che Guevara.
Ernie Guevara.
Ernie Guevara. I forget what is the diminutive of Ernesto Tito? Ernestito Guevara. Guevara, who had been living in Guatemala since sometime in 1953, had tried to spark armed resistance to the invading forces, but without any success. He just didn't have it yet, didn't have the juice yet. Guevara's experience in Guatemala had a profound effect upon his political consciousness. His first wife, Hilda Gadea, whom he met there, later wrote, "Up to that point, he used to say he was merely a sniper, criticizing from a theoretical point of view the political panorama of our America. From here on, he was convinced that the struggle against the oligarchic system and the main enemy, Yankee imperialism, must be an armed one, supported by the people."
Can't get away from Che when we're reading about these Latin American things in this time.
He was just fucking everywhere, man.
To pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
I have more information on Che just because I added it because I liked it. On December 1953, before leaving for Guatemala, Guevara sent an update to his aunt Beatrice from San Jose, Costa Rica. In the letter, Guevara speaks of traversing the dominion of the United Fruit Company, a journey which convinced him that the company's capitalist system was disadvantageous to the average citizen. He adopted an aggressive tone to frighten his more conservative relatives. And the letter ends with Guevara swearing on an image of the then recently deceased Joseph Stalin not to rest until the octopuses have been vanquished. Later that month, Guevara arrived in Guatemala, where President Jacobo Arbenz headed a democratically elected government that, through land reform and other initiatives, was attempting to end the latifundio agricultural system. So, Guevara, much inspired in his revolutionary path by what he saw in Guatemala. And he swore on a picture of Joseph Stalin that he would commit his life to combating it. Which he did.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, I would say that calling us what would you call it? I guess political snipers, so to speak. Yeah, I'd say that's accurate, being that we're not really involved with too many meat space organizing and stuff like that. I'm not ashamed to say it, I do wish that I had more time or just more what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. We've talked about it at length before, on other streams. You can go back to one of the older episodes and find that.
I'm sorry this is so small. Are you able to read this?
Yeah, I'm going to be able to read it.
All right.
Guevara was eager to fight on behalf of Arbenz and joined an armed militia organized by the communist youth for that purpose. However, frustrated with that group's inaction, Guevara soon returned to medical duties. Following the coup, he again volunteered to fight, but soon after, Arbenz took refuge in the Mexican embassy and told his foreign supporters to leave the country. Guevara's repeated calls to resist were noted by supporters of the coup, and he was marked for murder. After Gadea was arrested, Guevara sought protection inside the Argentine consulate, where he remained until he received a safe conduct pass some weeks later and made his way to Mexico. The overthrow of Arbenz regime and the establishment of the right-wing Armas dictatorship cemented Guevara's view of the United States as an imperialist power that opposed and attempted to destroy any government that sought to redress the socio-economic inequality endemic to Latin America and other developing countries. In speaking about the coup, Guevara stated, "The last Latin American revolutionary democracy, that of Jacobo Arbenz, failed as a result of the cold, premeditated aggression carried out by the United States. Its visible head was the Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, a man who, through a rare coincidence, was also a stockholder and attorney for the United Fruit Company." Guevara's conviction strengthened that Marxism, achieved through the armed struggle and defended by an armed populace, was the only way to rectify such conditions. Gadea wrote later, it was Guatemala which finally convinced him of the necessity for armed struggle, and for taking the initiative against imperialism. By the time he left, he was sure of this.
There's a picture, too, of Che and Arbenz in Cuba.
Who's the guy to the left of them, though? This
no
guy.
clue.
Oh, damn.
But yeah, it's interesting to read like how he passed through and had like this is such a huge part of his story, this situation, and largely an influence on why the Cuban Revolution has maintained for as long as it has.
Yeah,
because of the consequences of the coup in Guatemala.
But I mean, like, I think it's just it's interesting that like literally like he was alive during like the time of fucking Joseph Stalin's passing, right? All of these guys, like Fidel was literally like, I always call him like this interesting link to like another time, like that post-war when the Cold War was still fresh, all the way up until like nearly the start of the new Cold War. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where it's just like he was around for the election of Xi Jinping. There are so few historical figures, right, that we can point to that like lived that long that aren't Gorbachev, and like it's it's kind of it's an amazing thing.
Right. On June 30th, while the dust was still settling, Dulles summed up the situation in Guatemala in a speech which was a monument to Cold War speak. The events in Guatemala exposed the evil purpose of the Kremlin to destroy the inter-American system. Having gained control of what they called the mass organizations, the communists moved on to take over the official press and radio of Guatemalan government, which is so funny because that's exactly what the United States did. Yeah. They dominated the Social Security Organization and ran the Agrarian Reform Program, dictated to the Congress and to the president, where Arbenz was openly manipulated by the leaders of communism. The Guatemalan regime enjoyed full support of Soviet Russia. The situation is being cured by the Guatemalans themselves. I have, in all my reading of Arbenz and this, I've never come up once on an actual connection between Arbenz and the Soviet Union.
None. I don't think there. No, I think like throughout his entire life, I don't think there was like a single connection. Even when he's taking up asylum in Cuba, it's like still technically not the Soviet Union.
Right.
Sorry, I'm like starving. Oh shit, no, that's not it. Thus it was that the educated, urbane men of the State Department, the CIA, and the United Fruit Company, the pipe-smoking, comfortable men of Princeton, Harvard, and Wall Street, assured each other that the illiterate peasants of Guatemala did not deserve the land which had been given to them. that the workers did not need their unions, that hunger and torture were a small price to pay for being rid of the scourge of communism. The terror carried out by Castillo Armas was only the beginning. It was, as we shall see, to get much worse in time. It continued without pause for more than 40 years. In 1955, the New York Times reported that from the United Nations that the United States has begun a drive to scuttle a section of the proposed Covenant of Human Rights that poses a threat to its business interests abroad. The offending section dealt with the right of peoples to self-determination and to permanent sovereignty over their natural wealth and resources. Said the newspaper, it declares in effect that any country has the right to nationalize its resources.
This is a picture that I added this. This is the end of the reading, I believe. But I added this. This is Arbenz leaving Guatemala, where he was humiliated at the airport of the border. They made him strip in front of everyone, like a very publicized humiliation of the government. Is that while he was granted exile, they made him strip naked in front of an entire airport or border crossing situation or something like that.
Of course they fucking did.
Yeah.
Oh. After the Cuban Revolution of 1959, a representative of the Fidel Castro government asked the Arbenz to come to Cuba, to which he readily agreed. Sensing an opportunity to live with fewer restrictions on himself, he flew to Havana in July 1960 and, caught up in the spirit of the recent revolution, began to participate in public events. His presence so close to Guatemala once again increased the negative coverage he received in the Guatemalan press. He was offered the leadership of some revolutionary movements in Guatemala, but refused, as he was pessimistic about the outcome. In 1965, Arbenz was invited to the Communist Congress in Helsinki. Soon after,
another thing too is everybody I didn't even include any of William Blum's commentary about Arbenz not actually being a communist,
right?
Because immediately after all this, he goes right to Cuba and he's going to communist congresses in Helsinki and shit like that. So it's I believe he was.
Yeah, maybe if he died, in all of this, you could maybe have some kind of leeway to be was he? Wasn't he? Who knows? Yeah. But the dude lived past the coup, and he went to communist Cuba.
For me, if you listen to the interviews with his wife that are in this book, where she says how much the Communist Manifesto changed his life, and he started reading Marx and Lenin and Stalin, and they offered this framework for their country's history, and he was all enthralled by it. And then all of his close friends were communists, and he legalized the Communist Party, and he was doing land reform. Now, he was a very tactful communist. He wasn't just trying to do this huge. He was trying to be very moderate with it, but he was of the opinion that they needed to industrialize through a capitalist method before they could transition into something that was more socialized.
Right.
Then you combine that with immediately after the coup, he's in Cuba, communist congresses in Helsinki. I think, we can say you can say that he was of that political persuasion easily.
I mean, that's what all of the old, 1950s communists thought, whether you're looking at Indonesia, or fucking, Arbenz himself. I'm pretty certain even if was the guy in Brazil even a communist? I think he was just kind of like a Demsuck, wasn't he? I don't even know. Whatever. My point is that at that time, that's what a lot of communists believe, that you need to do industrialize and then you start doing the social programs.
It wasn't until after Mao that was oh.
Yeah. Oh, you could just skip over that shit. Yeah. But then they wound up fucking doing it anyways in the fucking 70s. And they're we kind of do need to industrialize. We're, but there's arguments to be made both ways. But back to Arbenz and his daughter. Good job. Soon afterwards, his daughter Arabella committed suicide in Bogota, an incident that badly affected Arbenz. Following her funeral, the Arbenz family remained indefinitely in Mexico City, while Arbenz himself spent some time in France, and Switzerland with the ultimate objective of settling down in Mexico. One of his visits in Mexico, Arbenz contracted a serious illness, and by the end of 1970, he was very ill. He died soon after. Historians disagree as to the manner of his death. Roberto Garcia Ferreira stated that he died of a heart attack while taking a bath, while Cindy Forster wrote that he committed suicide. On the 19th October 1955, Arbenz's remains were repatriated to Guatemala, accompanied by his widow Maria. After his remains were returned to Guatemala, Arbenz was given a military honor as military officers fired cannons in salute as Arbenz's coffin was placed onto a horse-drawn carriage and transported to San Carlos University, where students and university officials paid posthumous homage to the former president. The Universidad de San Carlos de Guatemala, which previously held autonomy following the 1944 Guatemala Revolution, awarded Arbenz with a posthumous decoration soon after. After departing from the university, the coffin containing Arbenz's remains was then taken to the Nacional Palace, where it would remain until midnight. On the 20th of October 1995, thousands of Guatemalans flocked to the Guatemala City's cemetery for his burial service. During the burial service, the then Guatemala Defense Minister General Marco Antonio Gonzalez, who received Arbenz's remains after they were returned to the country, stayed in his car after crowds booed and screamed, "Army of assassins, get out of the country." Huh. So, I don't know if you remember everybody that was here during like the sort of beginning, how we love to play our little videos before we actually get started. The video that I played for the last Guatemala episode was from, I believe, the 90s, right? And talking about a lot more of like the contemporary history after the overthrow of Arbenz and a little bit during.
This won't be the last. This is not the last section of Killing Hope that covers Guatemala.
Right.
Just throwing that out.
Well, maybe we'll bring it back up as a refresher for you. You'll never know. And that is that for Guatemala. It's the last slide, bro.
Yes, sir. Actually, there's 1, 2, 3. There's actually 3 sections of this book on Guatemala.
God damn. All right, so for all of those on YouTube, Los Salam, stay strong out there. Hopefully I upload this before the end of the week. I know, I'm shitty.
You want to see that video of Armas and Nixon?
Do we want the YouTube peeps to be able to see it?
Yeah, sure.
All right, fine.
It's topical.
Fine.
I just thought this was kind of humorous when I watched it.
He does look like shit in black and white.
Your Excellency, Mr. Nixon, we are very pleased to have you as a guest on your goodwill tours to the sister Republic of Central America and the Caribbean. I will try to speak you in English, which is not my language, because I want to take advantage of your presence at the exposition of Red Propaganda to say a few words about the influence of international communism in my country. I speak not as a chief of state, but as a soldier in the war against the communism. Before the revolution, which I directed and which overthrew the Arbenz government in June as last year, Guatemala was dominated by the communists. That government did not have the support of the Guatemalan people.
Why wouldn't it be?
That government had a destructive influence in this hemisphere, for it threatened the friendly solidarity of all the American nations. The government of Colonel Arbenz was under the direction of a foreign power with an ideology alien to my people. That is why the liberation movement, which I had the honor to head, was begun, and that is why the movement, organized by a small group of patriots, succeeded too quickly. With all the strength of their being, the Guatemalan people wanted the anti-communist revolution to succeed. They were sick of communism and tortured by its system of slavery. I have wanted to say this to you, Mr. Nixon, because the Guatemalan people preserve an indelible memory of the tragedy and want to be verified by all those who visit us. I hope you will tell the many people you will meet on your tours about all things you have seen in Guatemala.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's been, to me, a very graphic experience to see this exhibit of what the communists were doing in Guatemala. Guatemala has always been a country in which we in the United States of America have had a great interest. Our two peoples have been friends. And yet we see in this exhibit what happened to this country under the regime of the communists. The atrocity pictures which we saw at the beginning are almost too difficult to describe. And then we have seen mountains and mountains of literature, some of it in back of us, in which they were attempting to change the minds of the people and to warp them over to supporting international communism. We have seen also motion picture film.
They literally have a bunch of books all around. I don't know if you saw.
Right. No, I did.
It's all books and shit. And they're like, look, this is all communist literature. They were really fucking. They were going to convince people that communism's good based on these books. Like any country you go to, you know how many fucking books you could find on a topic? Like if you go to people's libraries and shit like that, like.
Are there even that many books on communism?
In Guatemala at that time, there's probably a bunch. If those books are even real, which they're probably not.
Right, because it's like, who's reading them?
Yeah, 70% of the country is illiterate. Yeah.
Right.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
Motion picture films that were sent airmail direct from Moscow to Guatemala, and which had as their purpose again to propagandize the people and win them over to communism from the principle.
Tate, World War II was like less than 10 years before this fucking video was even being made. This is 1954. War only ended like 9 years ago.
Exactly.
Principles of freedom and liberty for which your government stands. I think, too, that I would not want this opportunity to pass without expressing on behalf of the people of the United States, of free peoples everywhere, of people who want to be free behind the Iron Curtain, our appreciation to you, to those who worked with you in fighting against the communist government and overthrowing it. This is the first time in the history of the world that the communist government has been overthrown by the people. And for that we congratulate you and the people of Guatemala for the support they have given. And we are sure that under your leadership, supported by the people whom I have met by the hundreds on my visit to Guatemala, that Guatemala is going to enter a new era in which there will be prosperity for the people together with liberty for the people.
Do you think that this dude is like looking at him because he has no idea what the fuck he's saying? Or do you think, like, you know, when he's talking about it was overthrown or by the people, then he's just like, wait, no, it wasn't. We had your help.
I believe Yasir Hamas probably like
he was in on it.
He believed he believed he was a fucking hero and like
right.
I guarantee you he just has no idea what Nixon's saying to him, so he's just kind of staring at him like,
sure, whatever you say, boss.
But fucking, it's so funny just to hear, like, I've never heard that say, like, this is the first time in history that a communist empire was overthrown by the people. It's like, so like, dog, how can you even say it?
I don't know, dog.
Thank you very much for allowing us to see this exhibit of communism in Guatemala.
You're welcome, sir. If you want, we can start seeing all this little things. This is Fortuny's diary, personal, that he always carried in his pocket, you see.
I see. This is a personal diary?
Personal diary.
I see.
Fortuny, handwritten by
personal
him.
notes.
And personal notes taken, and he always carried this little booklet in his pocket.
You hear that? This is Fortuny's personal diary. That was one of those communist
They have
leaders that we had
Kenya
in-
Bravo, you know, the communist Chilean teacher that came to Guatemala, signed by her, given orders. in the palace, you see. And see on this thing, this is a letter from
World Federation of Trade
Labor
Unions.
to our Federation of Laborers here in Guatemala.
Yeah, which showed the direct control by the international communist conspiracy.
Salant, you see. Then here is how to be a good communist. This is printed in the Guatemalan press, national typography here, you see. How to be a good communist, sir. Nuestro tiempo with Arbenz. See, the press.
Yes.
Yeah. Arbenz there. And the telegrams.
What's that?
Look at the shit that they're showing him. Can you go back a little bit?
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe not that far.
Okay.
Go ahead, play there. Oh no, okay, you're good.
Fortuny, handwritten by
personal
him,
notes.
and
This is
personal notes.
Fortuny. You know the guy
He always
Fortuny?
carried
He was
this
one of
little
those two
booklet
guys
in
that I
his
showed in the
pocket.
beginning. That was one of our Ben's advisors, but he was part of the PGT. Which is
They have this one, the Eugenia Bravo, you know, the communist Chilean teacher that came to Guatemala, signed by her, given orders in the palace, you see. And see on this thing, this is a letter from
World Federation of Trade Unions.
Labor to our Federation of Laborers here in Guatemala.
Yeah, which showed the direct control by the international communist conspiracy.
Salant, you see. Then here is how to be a good communist. This is printed in the Guatemalan press, national typography here, you see. How to be a good communist, sir.
How to be a good
Nuestro
communist.
tiempo with Arbenz. See, the press.
Yes.
Yeah. Arbenz there. And the telegrams that the director of police sent everybody killing anti-communists, giving orders. This is a Fortuny. You see, Fortuny. And this. Now see, these are two books by Lenin, you see. Marx, Engels, Marxism, and Stalin.
Stalin.
His works.
You see, and these were put in the schools of Guatemala?
In the schools of Guatemala, all of it. And especially this, this one, it's printed in Moscow in 1953, and this is the story of Marusha, a little girl from the schools in Russia. And they just gave all this very well printed to everybody.
Printed in Spanish for Guatemalan
Spanish
schools.
for Guatemalan schools in Moscow. Yes.
Printed in Spanish, right?
This is the story of Marusha, a little girl in the school.
And what is this over here?
Well, those are films, sir.
That's mine.
Everything is paid by Guatemalan government and airmail, and it's Soviet sport film, you see. Sport film, all of the films here. Communist party in Guatemala, and informed of their activities. And see this, sir. This is Pravda by airmail from Moscow directly to Guatemala.
Like, do you know what kind of undertaking it would be for the Soviet Union to get planes over Guatemala?
New Times.
New Times.
At that time?
New Times, Soviet culture. Magazines by the hundreds.
Look at the size of that
Live in
magazine.
Soviet Russia. They printed beautiful.
Damn.
The thing that is that these are just samples. You've got mountains of this material, I understand, that you found when you came in.
Mountains.
Samples of what you see, sir.
Of course, we could pick up all that they have here.
But you know, there were some people during the Arbenz regime that said that there was a question as to whether it was truly a communist regime and as to whether it was controlled by Moscow. We have here the proof that there was no question whatever.
There was no doubt at all that Russia controlled all the communists here in Guatemala, sir.
In other words, the Arbenz regime was not a Guatemalan government. It was a foreign government controlled by foreigners.
That is and that happened just here in the continent.
Right here in America.
Just here in America. Right. Practically a few miles.
Right here.
Well, it's a good lesson for all of us to be on guard against what the communists try to do.
That's what we try to do, sir. And that's why we have here Colonel Castillo Armas.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. President.
What a talk. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. There's an issue going on.
All right. Oh, there he is. Well, that's it. That's about all I got here.
All right, YouTube peeps. Till next time. Thal salam. Stay strong.
So let's talk about that tongue sucking.
Yeah, no, we're going to talk about the tongue sucking. I'm going to stop the recording right now.